explain to you kind of how I did it, and then if you
So
want
now
to
every
organize it
time I
differently, we
type
can
bill,
we can
it
set it
goes
up
to this
differently. But
small
it's basically
email, and
on the
it's
homepage of
not-
robertsfield.org. That first paragraph says we built the master plan, and there's a link that says
Is that like-
you can read all about what we did before, and if you click on that, it'll bring you down to. All right, it's 7:05. You guys ready to go?
Yes.
So seeing that it's 7:05, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. First, I'll say that Chelmsford Telemedia is recording the meeting tonight. And if there's anybody else recording, please let me know. I'm seeing none. So we'll start our meeting like we start all of our meetings with public input. Is there anything that anybody would like to come up and talk about first? Seeing none. So this should be, technically, a relatively short meeting. We've got a couple of things in detail that we'll need to talk about, mainly the natural playground, but pretty much everything else is updates.
Is Terry coming?
Yes, he said he was going to be here.
Okay.
So we'll start with this is the update that Steve sent me today. Basically, the site work is ongoing. They started working on the playground site Monday. And I think, Elizabeth, you said you went and visited it today.
I did. I walked around today and I had some questions about the lines that I saw painted on the front corner that looked like fencing lines, but they didn't look like they included. I have not since relooked at our fencing picture, but they looked like they were inside of where the pear tree is, and I thought we were pulling that fence line out.
Those may have been the
Side.
path lines. Remember when we were there? We
Yeah.
thought we saw those too.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, this is where the path is gonna go. So it could be
It could have been that. There's been a lot of digging since.
yeah.
Yeah, I was there a couple days ago and saw a lot of digging. I think in the main structure areas.
Yeah, I took pictures. Unfortunately, as I said, it's on my phone and it's dead. So, but there was some. I wasn't sure. The digging didn't go out as far in the back as I kind of thought, and so I just had some questions. But if Steve's not here, I guess
Okay.
can't really.
Would you want to outline your questions and send them to Steve? I mean, I think that would be fair to do if you want to do that.
Yeah, I will try to get my phone to be accessible, and then I will compare the pictures that I have with the site map to verify that I'm not just making things up. And then
Because we never really did get a revised fence
drawing from him.
Right. We had that one that.
We had things we said, and then we had words back, and but we never had a visual back to make sure we were all on the same page. So that would be, I would like it if at the very least we can ask him to send us a visual drawing of his drawing line.
Is that something you're willing to send him a request for? Okay, great. The next update was that the equipment is tentatively scheduled for delivery on May 14th. They've ordered the tables, benches, and the border. I assume that border is the border for the wood fiber. He spoke with baseball, and they're using the field until May 25th, and then the DPW will demo that fencing closest to the playground.
So sorry, tables, benches. What type of benches?
I'm assuming the metal benches. That's the ones that he said he was going to order.
Okay.
And then he says that, so the baseball, and then says that he's been in contact with Harrington and I'm assuming this is the Girl Scout troop, because I had connected those two. And they're going to repurpose one set of brackets for the buddy bench. And then he says that they can salvage at least two more sets, which I assume is two more benches. So there'll be at least two wooden benches if we can get a volunteer group to repurpose the wood and clean up the metal parts.
Okay. So we'll have some sort of mishmash of benches.
Right, and then there's also those, he doesn't mention this in his update, but he had said to me on site a week or so ago that they had the old picnic tables that were there before that were possibilities for resurfacing as well. So those are two projects that we are advertising for volunteers to take on. So there'll be at least those wooden things there.
Because he wasn't gonna resurface them.
Correct, right. And that's kind of a good project for a
Yeah.
volunteer, too.
It is. Yep.
Any questions on the update from Steve? The next is just the map. I just included this in case we needed to reference it. This is the one that we've been looking at for the last few weeks with the new green poured in place. No changes there. The next is a discussion of the natural play area design concept plan, and Terry's here from Western Nurseries. I saw him come in.
Yep.
Would you mind joining us?
Nope.
So we tried to outline on the left-hand side kind of what the different pieces and parts of the concept plan are that we've talked about so far. And then the right side, the pictures are sort of the different images from the things that we've talked about too. The big image, the big takeaway here is the plan that Terry worked on. And I want to point out too that there's been it's slightly different than it was 2 hours ago. Because we shared the plan with Steve, and I had given Terry the older version of the plan before the swings were shifted down to adjust for the butter berm in the back. So that bank was moved down, and when it moved down, it moved the pathway down. And so the drawing that he was working with, the top of it was higher, so it was a flatter top, more parallel. So I made a quick adjustment to it, so it's not. This isn't necessarily vetted by Terry yet, but
I think it's okay. I mean, like I said to you, Bill, you gotta wait until things done to finish those curves up. The hardscape is always more difficult.
right. But I think so. But the plan, I think what you tried to do, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you tried to incorporate the feedback that we gave at the last meeting, and then the feedback that you got since then. And then the size of the structure, the shade structure, has actually changed. It was I think a 16 by 12, but it became a 20 by 16 structure, a larger structure.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So if it looks big, that's why.
How much cost increase is that?
I don't know what the increase is, but the cost of that structure is $10,190, I believe. It's listed in a slide that's coming up.
Okay.
I don't think the cost increase was significant, and it allowed him to put larger tables in. That was what he said.
Yeah, I was curious as to why the increase, but to put larger tables.
I think it was to
sure.
put larger tables. So it was 8-foot long tables, and they run parallel to the longest side of the structure. So
So there's 12 feet of space. So there's 6 feet on either end of them?
I don't know the dimensions, but I can say that the tables run, like if this is the shade structure, the tables fit like this, right, on the long edge.
Right, so if those are 8-foot tables and it's a 20-foot long structure, then you have about a 6-foot side on either end
I'm not going
around.
to dispute math, I don't know.
So I just quickly dropped it out, and that's about what I came up with. 5 to 6 feet.
Right.
Will allow enough circulation around.
Nice. Okay.
Good.
And the idea there is that you'd want to have access, the two ends of the tables are the ends that are going to have the roll-up access for wheelchairs. So you want to have those two ends, you want to have accessibility to those two ends. So somewhere in the pathways want to kind of lead into those ends. So that's as much lead in as I'm going to give on that. If you have anything else you want to add.
That's great. So, sorry, there's a center, is the structure going to be the same as that bottom one, as in there's going to be 3 posts
Yes. To my
on
understanding
either
is
side?
it is, yes. My understanding it's a 6-post structure, 16 by 20. And that the benches that are inside it are going to be not the ones that are embedded in the concrete, but the ones that have feet that'll be lag bolted into the concrete, so that if they have any issues with the things, they can take them out easily and replace them, versus having to chip up the concrete and cut the stuff out.
And as a labeling question, you're calling this a natural play area, but isn't this just the sensory garden, not the run around, climbing on rocks and slide in that area?
So that's true, except that the idea was that it connected to that
Okay.
open zone. And that's why that top left path, that's supposed to
Okay.
Right
be
Take you
there.
up to-
easy, access if they wanted to, but not too easy. In other
Right.
words, they have to, not that they have to work that hard, but the idea
Yeah.
is that there's a little adventure coming around the curve, right?
And that kind of sends you up to the butterfly garden, right?
Well, the butterfly garden, we talked about being
Like up into
The-
the,
up-
in a different zone,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, off,
So-
off of that corner there.
Kind of between the swing bank and then the gate, sort of over in that area.
Yeah, right.
So I wrote a really long email to Terry.
Yeah.
And so we had,
So can I just say this, can I just tell you before you start?
yeah.
Don't ever feel like you're rambling on, okay?
Okay.
I said this in the email, I want everybody to hear this, right? The great ideas come from like just keep on rolling. You
Stream
come
of
up with a thought
consciousness.
process and you take it to the end and you see where it takes you, okay?
That
So
explains
don't
my
ever
email.
don't ever feel that way, anybody, I don't care who it is, okay, go ahead.
So my concerns were that we kind of had lost the labyrinth feel because there's no longer this circular path on the inside, and it didn't have. It's basically spokes that bring you out to the playground, but it no longer kind of encapsulates you inside the garden area as a kind of, we talked about having a labyrinth the whole since the beginning, and then we saw this and we're like, oh, we finally have like a labyrinth type thing. And then with the new design, when he tried to make the green areas or the paths bigger based on our last request, I felt like it kind of lost that sort of labyrinthy thing. So I had come up with a kind of random idea of if you had kind of switched the rotation of half the paths effectively, so you ended up with petal-shaped kind of loops. I asked whether or not it would make sense to, you can't really see this, but to have something where if you had the whole thing kind of looked like a flower where you had like 3 or 4 petals type loops, and then you'd have more of it would lead you back in. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, she's
I
gonna
was
draw
gonna say,
it.
can you draw it out?
Well, I have it drawn out.
Okay.
Okay.
But I don't really want to put it all up, so.
I'm not an artist.
Yeah, so where like one of the edges, where the petals would be 2 walkways around, yeah, like that, where it'd be a center garden and it would kind of look like a flower-shaped thing, which would kind of allow like looping back walking as opposed to like directed out. And I was just asking his thoughts on that
But
because
I did respond to you.
yes,
Okay, so here's my response to that. Did everybody see that?
Sorry.
thank you.
Bad.
No,
I
it's
didn't sign it. So kind of a simple, petal shape. All right, so the first thing is, so right now, we're looking at it, top down. All right, to actually feel in that space, when you have something like this, unless the paths are, around all of these things, you don't feel like you're taking an adventure, right? And I think that with the dimensions that are there, not when it's flat, nobody's gonna get an adventure for that, but once you actually do raise up the spiral parts, not just the center, but the spiral parts, I think especially kids, once you have, seating zone and then just some plant material that's not that high, they'll feel like they're going on a little bit of a curve, because you can't stand on the outer edge of this and be able to see into the center at any point. You actually have to enter into this zone, okay? And
Yeah.
again, I know it's very difficult to understand on that, but I think you have to go and actually go to a place that has something like this, where you don't have, an adult will be able to see to the center, won't be able to see everything, but most kids will not be able to see through here, because the plant material plus the wall is gonna bring you, about this high.
I guess that brings up another question. We've been talking about having visibility across the.
You'll still have that for an adult, but a
Okay.
kid doesn't wanna see the whole thing.
Right.
We want them to take this adventure.
Yes, but we want to be able to see the kids across
Be
it.
able to hear
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Yeah. And I kind of like how you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I kind of like how it incorporates the path. So, because if you don't incorporate the path around it, then there's only one entrance into the sensory garden and only one entrance out. So I could see a traffic issue with people coming in and out maybe. So this allows for, to use of all the pathways. So, yeah.
And from different vantage points.
Right.
Some people get into here, some people get into there. The other thing is, now again, we're going back and forth about where this thing is actually gonna be positioned. Frankly, I don't care. If it's this way, that way, it doesn't matter. My important point is that somebody in here will be able to just walk right out from under the shade thing and come right on there. This is 5 plus, I think it's 5.5 feet right here. So there's plenty of room for anybody to literally walk right through there.
Or wheel in, right?
Yeah.
Because it'll be the same level.
Well, that's, okay, I'm gonna bring that up in a second.
Okay.
So that's one point. The other point is, I mean, let's not forget, this has always been a contention about the tree and its buffer zone. This dotted line is the buffer zone. So I tried to take, you know, as much space as possible for green to cover this buffer zone. And we're hoping to put, you know, permeable, whatever we do, either, you know, wooden walkway or permeable paving or something, so that it protects this root zone around this tree, right? Okay. Then the last thing is, the question about how wide is this? That's something you brought up.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked when the last one came in at 14 feet across.
Yeah,
I thought
so
we were
we're
talking
looking at
about a,
6 feet, and then Bill and I have been talking about putting some, you know, sort of sculpture in there. And originally I was thinking something much smaller, but Bill's thinking something much bigger. It'd be way out of scale if we have a 12-foot, you know, wind thing, and this was only 6 feet. It's gonna look too tiny. So now this is at 14 feet.
so what we were talking about being able to keep up with plantings just in that center garden.
It's only 160 square feet.
Right, but that's a lot more than a 6-foot diameter garden, which we had been talking about, and the person who is in the audience here who had offered to help take care of stuff. A 14-foot diameter circle is immensely larger space to take care of.
Yeah. So again, this is just, we're still in concept, you know what I mean? Everything's fluid, right? If you want that back to 6 feet, that's fine. I think that that's too small, 6 feet for this, you know, we're gonna have something that big. So that's something you guys have to decide. If we do that, I'm gonna enlarge these and move them closer to the center. 6 feet is plenty around here.
Yeah.
For people sit, you know, if a wall comes in there, for people sitting there and people going by, whatever. Yeah, plenty of room for, you know, nice circulation around here.
Which it brings me back to the one other thing I think I said in my email, which is I really miss the symmetrical teardrop shapes
Yeah. like
from the
that.
original design, which this
Has lost.
has completely.
Well, it's not
left.
completely gone. It's-
Well, they're
it's
not
as sharp.
they're not symmetrically, you know.
They need bigger space.
Well,
So the image that you sent, I don't know if everybody saw this, so.
oh no, I literally just sent that to you, and that was
Okay.
just an idea of.
All right.
And
So
I know that was a totally different. That was the only plant
There's
shaped
a great,
garden.
anyway, so there's a great labyrinth. It's in Michigan. I've been there. It's awesome. And it literally takes you about half an hour to go from the beginning into the center.
Right, and
It's
I was
150 feet across.
right. No, I just literally that was the only
And
one
that's
that
the
was
center.
the shape of
It
a
goes
flower.
beyond that. You have to actually go like beyond that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So if you guys want to, you know, cut out the sidewalks and stuff like that.
No, as I said in my email, I said a teeny tiny itty bitty
Yeah,
version of.
because what I really did, and if you look at it, you can see, what I really did was I took that teardrop shape and I dropped them on here. And then wherever I had an intersection, I just cut it off. Because I was trying to give you as much green space as possible while still paying attention to the 5 or 5 plus. Some places it's 5.5 feet just because, you know, it's wide like this, but minimum of 5 feet everywhere. So if you can imagine this shape, it actually came all the way out here, and then I just, you know, sliced it off there.
And again, we're looking at it from the top down,
Yeah.
right? We gotta remember, you're not gonna be looking at it. We're not gonna be in a helicopter over above it, right? You gotta
Nobody is.
envision it actually being
And
used.
I understand it's a hard vision to do.
And that's how I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I'm
Yes,
trying to.
And you know, I'm not asking everybody to think the way I do because I'm whack, right? But the best thing to do is after they have all of their infrastructure in place, meaning the shade thing and the walkways and everything, we just take a big fat rope and we drop this stuff down. And then you actually walk it. You're gonna have to imagine a little bit what it feels like when, you know, stuff is this big, but that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still concerned about those sidewalks underneath that tree. That tree has been damaged
Yeah.
during
No,
the
no, there's no
deconstruction.
question, yeah. So
So
here
it's in a
we're,
weakened condition, it's
Yeah.
old,
yeah,
and it's gonna have, at least some of the lower branches are gonna have to be limbed up to
Yeah.
get ADA compliance, but I'm still concerned whenever I see pavement within that.
no, it's not gonna be pavement, that's,
Well,
no,
there's gonna be a disturbance between the surface now, and you're gonna add something, so.
yeah,
I'll
but
call it pavement.
it'll be like decking, okay, which I've used in wetlands all over this state, so it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Or some other impermeable pavement.
I don't know,
Okay, you voiced your opinion, and I've answered you, so if
Okay.
you have something else, let's hear it.
no, I just like to see the walkways moved away from it more.
No, that's up to them.
Yeah, I understand.
Are the green spaces, it's hard for me to tell, but are the green spaces all basically the same shape and size?
Essentially the same shape and size, again, adjusted for, you know, I did take as much
Yeah, I
green
can see
space
the
as possible.
improvement,
Yeah. So if you took this and you dropped it on there, it'd be an exact duplicate right on top of it.
Okay.
All I did was just drop it and try to twist it around as best as possible.
It looks like it's gonna be different because of the pathway. You can't
Yeah.
control the pathway, so.
And the other thing we need to consider too is that there's other stuff that we'll need to add to it, like the stone benches, right? We were talking about doing 3 stone benches somewhere around it.
And are we talking about putting gardens in each of those external green spaces, or are we gonna do gardens
Over
in
time.
some and grassy areas in others?
I mean, we can talk, we haven't really talked, I mean, the initial thoughts we had were phase 1 grass, phase 2 gardens. But
But
we
if
can
you
do
did
a
like
phase 2,
garden-
phase 3.
If you did garden grass, or something like that, then you could have running space for the kids and
Okay,
garden.
the only comment I have about that is if you do that, if you leave this flat, you lose this sense of turning, because they can see straight across it.
And I think what Bill's talking about is the irrigation system, right? We can't even think about putting plants in until phase 2 of the whole project, because there would be no
Oh,
irrigation.
no, I know, I'm talking about long-term.
I think what you're saying is taking have phase 2 and phase 2, starting with doing one section plants and then leaving the rest grass for now, and then maybe once we get the funds and guaranteed for maintenance, doing a different one? Or are you saying
Well, I guess what I was
alternating?
thinking was at the very end, since, as Adele pointed out, it's gonna be more of a garden and less of a play area, if you alternated garden, flat, you know what I'm saying, then
Right.
you would have running space, you'd have 3 spokes of garden and 3 spokes of running
That's up
space.
to you guys.
Do you-
One of which, because, I mean, the tree itself isn't gonna
Right.
have a
I don't
whole,
envision that.
Do you-
I envision this thing being jammed with plants and also raised long-term, because there's plenty of other running around space.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's your guys' thing, whatever.
Right.
you-
And as far as
I'm
the
just here to
seating that
kinda
you're talking
give
about,
ideas, right?
could we not put those in the center, with that center green space part?
What'd you say?
Around the center to eat up a lot of that. If we did the larger footprint there, we could use the granite seating in the inside of, on the outer part of that. Yeah,
So,
because that'll eat up a lot of space.
Well, here's the
from-
thing, if this is raised to the 24 to 30 inch phase, that's a seat wall. If you guys go up to Tower
yeah.
Hill, you know, Tower Hill Botanical Garden, go
Yeah.
up there and
Love it.
check out their space, especially their new space.
Okay.
And you'll see they have some raised things, everything's ADA. And you can see there's a lot of people either leaning or sitting right on those walls. And they're
okay.
exactly 24 inches.
So if that is a sitting wall all the way around it, and you're saying it's 114 cubic feet in the center circle?
14 feet across.
14 feet across, so how much
I'll
would,
send you the,
how much would the-
send you the, whatever.
It's-
how
You-
much
you
would the
said
wall
it-
take up,
I
I guess?
calculated 154, I think you said
12
160.
inches.
12 inches on the
Yeah, so-
interior, so then,
12 inches in. I wouldn't go outside of that, I'd come in. In
yeah.
other words, it wouldn't
That's
be,
exactly, yeah, so that's gonna, I'm just thinking of the footprint for actually putting the plants, we were concerned it was too big and wouldn't maintain it. Would that wall shrink that in, so it was a
yeah,
little bit?
so again, I didn't want to get too far ahead, but if you want to get down to specifics, first off, you're taking up 1 foot all the way around.
Right,
Plus, whatever this is doing,
It's
if
gonna
this
take
is
up-
moving, you can't have anything where this is going either,
Right.
right? So now you just have essentially a ring around there.
Right, so the amount
And we
of,
also want to make it low-maintenance plants, which that list that you send,
Yeah.
most of those things are pretty low maintenance, you know? They're gonna need some, you know, I don't know.
So I didn't share that list with anyone, but my mom has like a
Yeah,
ton of
so a
plants
lot
that
of
she's
those
offered
things, a lot of
plants.
those things are on that original list that I gave you.
Okay, cool.
So I don't see any
Good.
problem with that.
Bill, do we have a commitment for the metal sculpture yet?
No commitments, but at least 2 people who are interested in
Okay.
possibly doing it.
Now,
Would we be open to something that the artist might want to just do as opposed to that specific design?
Oh, yeah, and the way that I've positioned it is that we would have final design, that both this board and the Roberts Field, Friends of Roberts Field Board would have final design approval, and so we'd work on the design with the artist,
Okay.
so to speak.
so
I
they could
guess
come,
I-
they could come to us and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking, and we would say, oh, let's
Right,
try it
and,
out.
and just the initial thoughts that I put into the document that, for information, was that it would have to be high enough to where a kid couldn't get to it and touch it.
Which I guess
That's why
that's
it
where
was so
we
high.
come to the, I didn't realize from talking to you, because I didn't look at the specifics. I know you sent me the YouTube, and I just didn't see the actual specifics. I hadn't realized it was gonna be 12 feet plus
Well,
tall,
again,
which makes sense if you think it's about 6 feet, you start at about 6 feet off the ground, and then you have about 6 feet of spinning stuff.
The dangerous stuff has got to be up high.
Right. I just, 12 feet seems huge.
I think you guys need to think that out too. So it's, let's say it's 12 feet, just for example.
Yeah.
Plus the 2 feet that the wall is. So now it's actually 14 feet.
Yeah, and what's the shade structure, probably? That's gonna be taller than the shade structure.
And then you have the tree right there
Right.
too. So, I mean, the tree's gonna make it look small either way. And we don't have to agree on the height of it now.
No.
We can
Yeah.
do that later,
The other thing
but.
is, I'm completely fluid on this entire thing,
Mhm.
you know, so like, Bill was going on about, you know, this thing, okay, fine, let him put it up, blah, 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 and I'll just adjust these green spaces, it's not that hard to do it. I can't do it in 15 minutes, but, you know.
I
can do
guess,
it.
which brings us back to I guess I had been thinking we were gonna put this in closer to the build date, but it sounds like this is like not gonna happen until after.
I think we should try to make it. Why
Well, he's
wouldn't we?
saying that until all the hardscape goes down, we're not gonna have a design
No, I'm not saying that.
solidified.
I'm saying that if, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you're gonna go with this basic design, let's say just, and you don't have to tell me tonight, but whatever, if you go with this, all these other things, the only thing that would change would be whatever happens right here. You know, just this zone around here.
You
That's
think we
the
can get the
only
hardscape? That
Oh, I thought you
hardscape
were saying
pattern,
that
you
with
can get
the, you needed the
I hope so,
hardscape to
yeah.
go down
I
to
mean-
know exactly where, because we don't, I mean,
Only for these two zones right here.
okay.
So, and I think that I talked to Steve at least conceptually about getting because we need to decide what kind of hardscape we're gonna put in, right? So just the cheapest way to do it would be to do the crusher fines. And then that would, because I think we agreed at the last meeting that we want to make the pathway natural, right? That would be consistent with what we're doing on the interior walking thing. So he at least was open to the idea of having that done during this whole process, right?
Right.
So he could put the hardscape in. But we would need to have all that defined because, like, if you look at where the shade structure is, he's going to probably want to extend the concrete over a little bit on the top to tie into the shade structure pad. You know what I mean? It's going to change the flow of his pathway. So it's really important that we finalize something sooner rather than later to
On the
give him
shade
that.
structure. On the shade structure.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, I think the shade structure is being dictated by our pathway too. So they really kind of go hand in hand, you know. I think, but I don't know.
So what do we need to decide on the pathway? Are we, as far as what, changing this design, or what do you?
Yeah, I mean, if we like this or don't like this, or I just think we need to decide what we want to. If we want to go with this, go with something different. We
Okay.
need to make a decision on the hardscape design so we can move forward with that. Plus, that we can start finalizing our fundraising for it as well.
As a design thing, would it visually and conceptually make any sense to put the shade structure in place of one of the teardrops so that it is almost a diamond to the walkway?
So essentially, that's what you've done. We've moved it from here to here. It could come down a little bit, but I think you lose that sense of adventure.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially, you know, and again, this is just my wacky thinking, that even if you're in here, you still get this sort of sense of this curve coming around, you know?
Okay.
And we also need a space somewhere to put the sign, right? And to put the Chelmsford Mass Rocks distribution thing.
Well, that's pretty small, and
But I'm
not
just
that
saying,
I'm forgetting about it, but I don't think that that's a key thing. The sign would be an interesting thing. Like,
Right.
where is that gonna be positioned? Do you feel most people are gonna be coming up this way to this, or this way? I mean, this is really the key location for a sign,
Mhm.
you know, for most people, I think, but.
So in the end, I'm sorry, I've lost this, but I know in the center garden you're talking about 2 feet. Are you off the ground as a starting point? Are you saying, are you expecting all of them to be 2 feet?
Yeah.
Is that what we were planning on doing?
Yeah, raised gardens, yeah.
2 feet off the ground, all of them?
Yeah. Can't be all of them. Around that tree, that garden can't be 2 feet off the ground.
Sure, I can. You can put a wall here and still have the walkway as,
I'm worried about the roots of that tree.
yeah.
You start putting a wall in, you're gonna have to go down, which immediately cuts into the roots. And in 5 years, that tree's dead.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna argue with you here, but that's pretty close to the tree. I don't think you're gonna hit any hair roots there. But again, we won't know until we actually get there. You don't have to put a wall in there, in this zone. That's totally fine.
what would be the lowest raised garden bed you would recommend?
So what he's saying is, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
My name is Jim. I'm
Jim,
an
right,
arborist.
yeah, I remember you, yeah, Jim. So what Jim is saying, any wall is gonna have to have a sub-base and a base so that the block can fit on top of it, right? So it doesn't matter whether there's a wall there or, you know, it doesn't matter what the height is. It would have to be cut into that. That's what he's saying.
But for all the others though, just from an aesthetic standpoint, what would be the lowest wall that you would think would still look
22
good?
inches.
Because of the center, so 24 inches driving that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then anything lower that, people don't feel comfortable sitting on.
No, not for sitting, but the ones around it, so the extra gardens around it, could they be lower? I mean, could they, and still look?
Yeah, you know, again, now you're kind of taking out the sense of adventure of coming around. The whole sense of adventure is, they can see where they want to get, but they can't go from point A to point B directly. You understand what I'm saying?
Huh?
So if they're here, they can't just go, you know, straight A to B. They have to come around. I know it seems like a little tiny thing, but to a little kid, that's an adventure. That they're kind of seeing things and they're literally physically turning their bodies around to come to the center and whatever is drawing them into that center.
So I mean, I'm thinking too, if it's too low, I think you're gonna have kids climbing on it, climbing in it, jumping
you're
up
gonna have
on
that
it, stuff like
regardless.
that. I mean,
So what?
well,
Right.
no, I know.
think
Put it 2
that's,
feet anyway.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
maybe,
part, it's in
but-
the middle of the
3 feet,
playground.
yeah.
We're gonna have to expect that. That's
Right.
kind of,
right.
it's the
Right.
play,
True.
it's all play area. My
Right.
concern is that we had an expectation of vision across the park and being able
But you're
to
still gonna
see
have vision across the park.
kids.
Yeah, that a kid can see across the
No,
park?
that I can see my kids across the
Okay,
park.
Well,
I mean, since it's all gonna be lower than
You can't
4
have both, you know what I
feet,
mean? You can see, and you can kind of see about where they are, you know what I mean? But how far away are you gonna be from your kids?
Depends on how fast they run.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my point is, if they're in here, this is a little tiny space. I mean, I don't know if
Yeah.
you people have been up there, this is a little tiny space.
Yeah.
So if you're in this shade thing, you'll be able to see them no matter where they are, okay? But if you're way out in the parking lot talking on the phone, you're not gonna see them, you know what I'm saying? So.
Oh, yeah, no.
You can't have it both ways. But Jim's point is a good point. So that's something that needs to be considered. Maybe this zone doesn't get a wall.
Yeah, so about that root
Or-
structure, they've already dug down around the perimeter already,
Yeah.
and you can see the roots sticking, where the roots have been cut
I
off at
understand
the
that.
edge of the,
I understand that,
structure.
but the hair roots are actually, you know, way out here somewhere. So we're gonna be disturbing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, how much are you gonna disturb it? No offense,
No, none
But
taken,
it's-
you're absolutely
but
right.
that's the point. We have to be careful every single step of the way. It's not just this 11 feet.
Mm-hmm.
It's everywhere.
What about the,
I'm sorry, technically speaking, in construction, this is the buffer zone to make sure our machine doesn't hit this. When we set it up for the root system, it's way out here. It's not way in there. Okay, so Steve knows this anyway, I don't have to.
Will the 2 feet height affect the ability of kids to, especially the littlest ones, to reach into the scent garden?
No,
or
so
taste?
I think anybody that's in a wheelchair, or, then that's really the reason for the raise thing, okay? Because they
Okay.
can't reach all the way down. But a wheelchair or anybody that's walking will at least be able to lean in and grab or touch
Okay,
anything that's in a garden, 2 feet is, way down here, right?
do you think the inspiration picture we have, the one we started with, do you think that they have a, those are raised, or are those flush
Those are all
gardens?
raised.
Those are raised? Okay, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I did not see that looking at that picture at all.
They don't have walls right along the edges, but it's
It's
mounted
mounded,
up.
right?
Yeah, it's mounted up. This is a heavily maintained facility.
Is the mounding a possibility, rather, because the thing that scares me about the walls is the cost, right? Because that's like
Well, be scared, but a kid in a wheelchair cannot reach something that's way on the
mounded.
ground.
Okay.
And that's really big thing.
Well, and I guess I kind of thought we were talking about raising the center one, but I didn't think we were talking about raising all of the edge ones without mound. I thought maybe we'd mound the edge ones and
That's what
raise
I
the
was thinking.
center.
I mean, listen, you guys can do whatever you want, okay? But this thing is heavily maintained. This is all raked every single day, or maybe twice a day, with special rakes. You can see the lines in the rake, okay? And it's mounded, and those mounds are heavily maintained. So if we want to eliminate a lot of maintenance, and we also want to have kids be able to, especially ADA kids, be able to get in there and reach, you're gonna have to wall it. Yeah. But again, it's your thing. You guys do whatever you want. I'm just here to throw ideas out. Yeah.
and the cost of your idea?
It's expensive. Well, listen,
It's worth it, right?
yeah, hello, you're gonna show.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what, while I'm here, I also meant to mention something else. So, and this is a little plug for Western Nurseries, okay? So, I don't remember the year, but a bunch of years ago, there was a beautiful beech tree in the garden in the middle of the.
On the common, the Copper
on the
Beach.
common, Right. And it got diseased or broken or whatever happened, okay?
It broke.
And Wayne Mezet, one of the owners of Western Nurseries, took a couple of cuttings and he rooted them. And we now have 2 of them right here in Chelmsford. They're about 4 feet tall right now. They're gonna be back here in Chelmsford somewhere, I don't know. This is not the location for them, but there's 10 million committees and garden clubs. Oh, no, I'm sorry, there's 20 million garden clubs. Anybody that has a good use for it, that we feel is a good use, we're gonna donate it to there and help with that, okay?
Awesome.
This is not the spot, but I just wanted to point that out. You may know some.
I'm on the tree committee, we've been
Yeah.
thinking about it, but we really,
Come by and take a look. It's right, I don't know if you know, I'm right by the garage door in the facility there.
oh, okay.
They're right outside my door.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
be interesting to.
Yeah, they're pretty nice looking. I mean, they're tiny, don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah, no.
But he's a great guy, he's an unbelievable horticulturist, and he did a nice job.
Uh-huh.
I think he's calling it the Chelmsford Freedom.
Right, they patented it.
Yeah.
So any comments on the concept design?
I still love it,
I
but
love it.
the cost of those walls are gonna,
Yeah.
Well, you
is
guys can-
scary.
Yeah, you guys can kick that around. If you decide to do just one wall, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how much money we raise.
So I think
Chelmsford famous beach.
the cost of the center,
That's what he's calling it.
the cost of the center, Jim, can you hold on the conversation?
Chelmsford famous.
Jim,
Terry, can you? Sorry.
the cost of the center wall, I think, was about $6,000. So, I mean, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And that's the only one considered
like-
in the current plan budget, right?
Right, so that's
Yeah.
like $40,000 just for the thing. So I think we're
Just
gonna be
for the
looking
walls.
at mounding.
Yeah,
For
I
phase
think
two.
mounding is really the only one that,
Jim.
I didn't realize it was that much.
Ballpark figure.
So, how do you guys want to,
I get you.
do you want to make any more changes to the design? Do you feel comfortable enough to move forward with the design we're looking at
Can I add an addendum?
and the
to that?
concept?
So,
Sure.
Technically, we're still in concept, okay? So if you're going along with the concept, then you can start getting down to the brass tacks. But I think you need to decide on a concept first.
Which the design is kind of the core concept, the core of it, right? So, are you, are,
I like the design, yeah, I have no problem.
I
with it.
vote to move forward with this one.
Yeah.
If you want to put it to a vote.
well, I'm,
I
if there's things,
think
let's
it's,
address it now. I mean,
I mean, I miss several aspects of the original thing that was more,
Okay,
Contained and
so I mentioned this
labyrinthy.
to Bill before.
yeah.
So I did a lot of work in New Orleans, post-Katrina, right? And we did similar things, but they have lots of roads, tons of roads, they have roads everywhere. And so what we did was, we just took these lines and like abstracted them and then just painted or changed the paving across and like carried that whole thing across. So if you wanted to do something like that, you know what I mean? Either paint on the paving or change the paving or whatever.
Yeah, I don't see that.
yeah.
Okay, there you go.
I mean, is it the circular outer lines that
Well,
are missing?
Do you still have the picture of what his original
This one right
concept?
here.
Well, no, your original green concept was, it was very different. I mean, it had rings, and part of it is obviously, some of that is not possible with where the tree is, and some of it's not
Well,
possible with
hold
where
on,
the
hold on.
structure
On
is.
that, I didn't spin this or anything. This was just a quick
Right,
thing, I
right.
didn't massage it.
Right. But I love that it kind of looped in and then looped out, and you kind of, it was more, you could get lost within the garden, and then you could loop out to the outer things. So I think it's prettier, and I think I miss the labyrinthy nature of it, but.
Which, I mean, really the thing that's missing are the circles on the outside, right?
Right, part of it is that the whole thing has just kind of ballooned from the center ring out, right?
Well, I think Dewey did that to make the paths bigger, right? To make them more ADA compliant, I thought. But if I
Yeah,
could be
well,
wrong.
certainly in here.
Those
There's
were-
a lot of them that, again, this was very quick. This was like,
Yeah.
Right.
maybe 2 hours, right? So I didn't measure any of these things out, but then when I went back later, these are nowhere near. We'd have to, reduce the number of them. I don't know whatever.
Right, and I guess that was the
Right.
thing that we talked about at the last committee, was if you could just combine every two, so you had 3 of those around.
Yeah, I don't know if then you would definitely lose the curves. But anyway, the other thing was, there's a lot more path in this, and a lot less garden. And that was the main
Right.
critique that I took back from this one, right? This has a lot more green.
Yeah.
The other one, there's more path, less green. This one's more green, less path.
Plus, to your earlier point, we're looking at it top down, so it's gonna look different in
Yeah, well, you
perspective.
would still, I agree with, I mean, don't get me wrong, I agree with you. That's why I did the first one first, right? You definitely get that sense in there.
Yeah,
But there's a lot of path in there.
right, but now there's a lot of garden that we have to come up with garden for and maintenance for, and I'm already concerned about the
Well-
maintenance for just the 14-foot one
Yeah, no,
in
no,
the
I
get-go.
understand what you're saying. Yes and no. So yes, there'll be more maintenance because there's more square footage.
Right, because a path, like more paths, that's paths, and that's not a lot of maintenance now.
Right.
More
Right.
green space,
But
we get it.
on the other hand, we're gonna make plant selections based on this criteria where let's only deal with it, once or twice a year. So I love that first one. I thought it was really cool, but, it's your committee. You guys do what you want.
I mean, to get there, we'd have to add in a circular path around it, right?
Well, that's what I feel like the existing pathway does, though, already, right? So
Right.
you'd almost make the existing pathway wider in some areas.
Right, so I mean, the thing is, whether you're lost, with this design, you are within the natural space, kind of lost within, versus the run around the external path thing. So if you, what I liked about this was it gave like you could keep walking around the whole thing and stay confined within the natural space. And once the other one, it pretty much all the paths shoot you out to the playground, which is fine. It's just it's a very different
Totally
feeling.
different concepts, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the labyrinthy, loopy
I
thing.
agree.
If you were going to mix the two concepts
No,
and you wouldn't have walls on this one?
to really get that sense, you would have to have walls, yeah.
Okay, so a lot of these shapes are fairly narrow.
Yeah.
Does that mean that, losing 2 feet to wall will,
Again, I didn't massage this one just because the
Yeah.
critique was there was too much, I'd have to give you another answer, but if you really like that one and I massage it, I don't know. But I'm back to Jim's point, again, I would still move these things around, don't get me wrong, I'd spin them around, but now we're really into seating on this tree.
yeah.
Okay, we're not even,
I just
it's
feel like-
almost like we're not even making an effort,
I feel like this would be a really good design for a larger area,
No question.
I guess. I just don't know that we have the footprint to do this
It's
design.
pretty, yeah, again, no criticism, this is a pretty small space.
Yeah.
I think that was the first comment I gave you, Bill, right? That's the space? Well, I-
But one that I can repeat in public, I think. maybe, yeah.
I'd like to make one statement.
I'm a little flamboyant, just so you know.
That area that we have that's protection,
Yeah,
we're probably gonna lose 95% of the roots, even if we protect that small area. So that tree is gonna be on a tremendous amount of stress. And then we get walkways inside, and any disturbance is just piling on, piling on, piling on.
So Jim, how would you change that plan?
I would move those walkways outside the protection zone at a minimum. That tree is gonna be basically your focal point, I think, of your garden.
yeah. So,
That's gonna be, hi, how are you?
so just back to Jim's point. So if this was, and Bill and I had talked about it, if this was more of a boardwalk type of path, let's say, through here and here, you have, so let me back up a step. So the main issue is compaction around the plant, around the root zone.
Mhm.
Okay, so by limiting the amount of compaction zone, you're helping the tree out, okay? So if these were boardwalk, meaning, you're limiting that zone either to just pilings on the sides or at a minimum ties, I think that's what you have over there now, ties going across, you're now taking a lot of the stress away from the plant. And you're also allowing, water to move through there, because you make the gaps wide enough that they can move through there. And by keeping the gaps at a certain point, this still would be ADA here, okay?
Could you move that whole left path left more?
We can do whatever you want.
I mean, is there a
Draw it on
reason-
piece of paper, or do whatever you want.
Right, but is there a reason not to move that to scoop around the edge of the tree zone as opposed to where it is?
Well, I was only keeping the same, so again, these are the same exact shapes, just, this is the center, they spun all the way around there, and I just cut it off. We could cut this whole thing off and just make this all green, so whatever
Well, I
you
guess
guys-
if you got rid of, if you made one boardwalk path, like if you made the path to the right a boardwalk smaller path that isn't ADA compliant, you don't need every single path to be ADA compliant, right?
No, that's.
Or no, you do have to have them
No.
You
ADA.
have to decide
you
that.
have to
I
have them ADA
disagree, but
compliant.
You do it, that's fine.
Well, or more to the point, if you moved it over, could you move them over slightly and make a wider swath around that tree?
Could you enlarge
In other words,
the green
enlarge this and
space?
narrow that down, and then you're not ADA.
No, I forget that I said make it narrower. I just mean
May I?
separate them.
Sure, do it on a piece of paper, yeah. It can be however you want, yeah. Jim?
I'd like to, if we take this walkway and we boot it out a little bit more,
Right.
we take this walkway and boot this out.
Jim, again, they can do whatever they want. I only did what was
I'm
asked.
just tossing it
I don't
into
care.
conversation, that's all.
Yeah, I don't care. It really
Yeah.
doesn't matter to me. The only thing I'm interested in is that, and this is for all you, the only thing I'm interested in with this thing is that the children get a sense of adventure from whichever point they enter. And that they're educated, you know, once you get here, now we're gonna give them some education about the feel of plants, the smell of plants, you know, all those things that I gave you that first time.
Right.
Which brings back to around the tree. Can we plant around the tree without,
In here?
yeah?
Oh, hell, yeah, yeah. We
Then
can't
we'll
go,
have to disagree
we can't
on
go
that.
we can't go up against the tree,
Yeah.
but we can plant around the tree, yeah.
So,
In my professional practice, I have run into some real major problems with that.
can we agree that we like the design, but that we would like the green space around the tree to be outside of the tree protection zone, and then to size the other green spaces kind of accordingly? And then if you need to rob from space, you have that kind of partial piece that's close to a shade structure, however, that ends up being, that could be shrunk down, right? Because
This one,
it's already halfway missing, you're right.
I wouldn't even do that, I would just cut it off a year.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, I'm just
yeah.
saying, if you had to make them all the same size, you have that one incomplete one that you could rob from if you needed to make it symmetrical, just saying. But can we agree that we want to
I mean, I
move
can
forward with the
sketch it out,
design?
you guys can take a look at it, it's whatever. Can I just address this thing though? So the thing about the planting, in this zone, this would be more ground cover type things, not, we're not talking more shrubs or anything, this is all low stuff.
Yeah,
But not up against a flare or anything like that.
well, I'm still, like I said, in my experience, I've run into problems, I've heard the same thing, oh, we won't do this, we won't do that, and then the tree gets in trouble 5 years later. Here's your focal point, and once the tree starts to go downhill, there is no magic, it's gone, it's gonna die.
All right, listen, I always wanted this, okay, and this is your committee, right? Why isn't this the center of the garden, and why is all this crap around it? You know what I mean, like, why isn't this the center? I never really understood this whole thing.
I think because the natural play area design was an afterthought to the original playground design. And the playground design itself,
Yeah, I know.
I never heard that before.
I mean, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but I think
Yeah.
in the way the equipment was put was.
Now,
in-
another idea I
purpose.
had was the big circle here, and then it just radiates out.
Mhm.
This is not the center. There is no, there isn't anything like this unless you put it in one of these, but this becomes like a ray instead. That would be another idea. I think I sent that to you early on as a hand drawing. Okay, you guys decide, I don't really care one way or the other.
Well, I think if you can conceptually go back and move the paths outside of the safe zone for the tree, and we can see how that looks, and then.
Well, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is really the safe zone for the tree, all the way out here where the drip line is. Okay, that's the most sensitive piece of the whole
Right.
puzzle, okay?
Right, but if we can move them at least outside the
The
tree
buffer zone,
zone that has been spoken for since the beginning of multiple committees ago.
You know, we basically, you pick your poison. You know, it's like the architects, they want 125% of the canopy. Well, that's great, but,
yeah.
you know, they lose a lot of trees because you can't do it.
Okay, so, are we gonna agree on we agreed that the design is the way we wanna go? Is that, or do we wanna look at another design as well?
I like this design. Do we want to vote on it?
I'm fine with this design as long as, I just don't see the walled gardens on all of the gardens. I see a walled garden in the center one. I don't see spending
Okay.
the money or the,
That would, so this is just concept, you guys can work out the details,
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
go along.
and as long as you move the paths outside the perimeter.
So we'll go with the design as it is, but we'll ask that the green space be outside of the tree protection zone, and then we can.
No, inside.
Inside, so the pathway is.
So-
Yeah,
Pathways
sorry, pathways outside. And then we can talk about the phase two stuff later, either
Okay.
raised or walled, and we'll have a better idea of the money that we have available to work with at that point too, right? Is that enough information to be able to get you to move really
So I'm-
behind concept
For
and
right now,
into,
and again, I don't know if I'll get
cost
to this in a
estimates?
second, but for right now, I'm just gonna move this out, I'm gonna move these pathways, yeah?
Just those two
And I'm
pathways,
gonna
right?
wait until this is actually finished before I zoom in on that, okay?
And everyone else is comfortable with the 14-foot diameter of the center?
Yeah, I'm fine with it,
I,
yeah. I mean, because again, his point is you're gonna have wall around it, then you're gonna have the structure in the middle, so it's gonna be a ring, so the gardening surface is not really gonna be all that, I don't think it's
It's not
gonna
gonna be
all that big.
all of
So,
the,
yeah, it's
No,
not
I
gonna be
mean, I know it's
14
not all plants.
diameter feet of garden.
Yeah.
It's probably, if you did a smaller footprint and didn't do the sculpture, you're probably gonna have the same amount of garden space roughly than if you do the sculpture and the.
Actually, what I'm concerned about there is it's out of scale. If you have something that tall and you have a base this big,
No, so I'm saying if you don't do the sculpture and we shrink the footprint,
that's different, yeah.
you're probably still gonna have the same amount of green space to do the garden as you would if you made it bigger,
Close.
but put the, yeah, it's not gonna be that much different, in my opinion.
well, do we want to discuss shrinking the sculpture maximum height now?
absolutely.
Okay.
Or
Well, how high should it be?
leave. I envisioned it in scale with the plants that were there, so that it would be no more than 6 inches to a foot higher than the tallest plant
But we
in
want to
that
move it
space.
out of the space of the moving parts at child level.
Plus, it kind of has to fit above the plants if it's going to move, right? Because otherwise the plants are going to grow into it and then it's not going to move. So if
Well,
it's
I think
going to,
it would be out, I mean, I assume we'd plant them outside of the
Yeah,
rotational diameter of the.
so with the 6-foot thing, you really can't go more than 4 or 5 feet,
Okay.
okay? If that's any help. In scale, that would look good, and then the same thing, kind of, I played around with the circles of what it would be. Really depends on what that's gonna be.
so 6 foot high from the top, so really 8 foot high off the top would be the top height? Is that what,
6 plus 2, yeah.
Mhm.
Because then I would shrink this down, because then this is out of scale if you're only gonna go 6 feet. You see my point?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I envision metal sculpture, I think of the kind of things Jim Glynos does, which really are more compact and there's less movable pieces, or fewer, actually, to be.
Jim who?
Jim Glynos.
How do you spell it?
Glinos. He is on the art committee.
I don't know. Can we, I mean, but do we need to see it? I mean, can we just kind of come up to a height idea? 'Cause that's really what we need to give Terry so he can define the diameter. Is it 8 feet? If 12 feet's too high, is it 8 feet? Is it 6 feet?
All right, so obviously there's a vision problem, right? What does that actually mean? Okay? I would prefer if you guys got together, maybe out there, and took a stick, and I could give you my surveyor stick if you want, and like set it in there and say, this is what 8 feet is, 10 feet, whatever, and actually take a look at what that actually means. Because 6 feet and 12 feet is a huge difference.
Yeah, part of the problem right now is that that it's been dug down already
Yeah.
2+ feet. So
That's-
if you do
no, don't take that into consideration. Consider what the top is gonna be, and then we work out all that plans after, okay?
I could stand up, I'm 6 feet, so.
Yeah.
And then Bill can stand next to
I
me,
was
he's
gonna
probably
say-
7 feet, so.
Right, but I think what you need to do is have something like that, and then go to the bridge and see if you can see it from there. Come from the
Right.
parking lot and see if you can see it, I mean, you really need to be able to visualize what that looks like. And I understand it's very difficult to do.
Well, can we just agree that it wouldn't be taller than 8 feet? And then that would give him the,
I'm not gonna draw it any different until you guys do this, okay? I'm in no
That's
rush.
fair.
It
So
takes
3 of us were there the other day, and we talked a lot about the height of the shade structure and the distance and what we'd be seeing. Because I was talking about the sight lines just in terms of the shade structure being, how tall did
12
we? We
feet.
thought it was 12 feet.
Mhm.
So we were already talking about, and there's bad boxes on the tree out there, which I think are at about 12 feet. So we were already discussing things at that approximate height while we're out there. It seems really tall to me to
Okay.
have the.
so what's the height? Is it 10 feet? Is it 8 feet? Is it 6 feet?
I think 6 too small, because
Yeah.
you're gonna have the 4 foot structure.
No, don't take into consideration that. What is the top, like, if you say it's 8 feet, then we know the thing has to be 6 feet, you know what I mean?
Right, yes.
You guys have to decide what the actual top limit is, and then we'll do the math for the rest of it, yeah.
I think 8 feet from the ground, so it's 4 feet lower than the shade structure is probably no more, but that's a 6-foot sculpture with a 2-foot, if there's a 2-foot.
Because they'll still need a base underneath them and all that kind of stuff, so don't worry about that.
But then we run into the moving parts at child level.
Well, maybe it spins this way instead of this way, so we'll figure that out. But you're 8 feet or 6? I'm sorry.
I from the flat plane of the ground, I would say 8 feet, which
Right.
brings the stick to 6 feet if you have
Okay.
a 2-foot.
What is the height of the bottom of the soffit there on the shade structure?
I have no idea.
Because that would be having it no taller than that
Well, that's
space would
kind
make
of-
it visually.
That's,
If you look at that shade structure,
Good.
there's probably no more than I would say it's definitely no more than a 4-foot drop from the top, probably on the order of 2 to
probably
3
a
feet.
2-foot, yeah.
So that's why I'm thinking 8 foot is solidly below.
I think we're pretty good at 8 foot.
Bill,
Okay.
I
Yes,
hate to do this.
but
You
don't.
got
Yeah.
that tree right there, the canopy. Your feature is gonna be probably within, or right next to that canopy.
Correct.
So
But it
it's
will
not
hit it.
gonna be out in the open, it's gonna be.
Right. Visually, it'll look smaller because of the tree
It won't-
canopy.
It probably won't show up very much.
So 8 feet? We'll go with 8 feet.
I would say that's the highest we want to go.
Mhm.
Maybe,
Yes,
maybe
8
go.
feet is as high as we want to
So
go.
then I'm gonna shrink that center from, what did I say, 14 feet to
14.
closer to 8 feet.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any other dimensions that you need us to
No,
agree on and give you?
Not at this point. I think just Steve needs to, once we get a thing from Steve, or it's up, or whatever the posts are in, then I can fix that top right-hand corner. But other than that, I'm all good.
Are you guys comfortable with the orientation of the shade structure? Do you have any issues with that at all?
I can't envision it right now. It's a sore thumb kind of thing.
Okay.
I think it's gonna look, just because it's not a square corner, it's not gonna, you're gonna have to make the pathway larger on some dimension, I gather. Because you can either line it with the top pathway or you can line it with the side
Yeah,
pathway, and either
yeah.
way, it's gonna look a
We'll
little
work it in.
odd, but,
Yeah, so that's why this is here.
right, I mean, that's what I'm saying, it's gonna look a little, and I'm not sure there's
Yeah,
any
it
way to
doesn't
get
match
around
up
that.
perfectly, right? So he's gonna have to
Because
add
it's
some
not
more
90 degree
concrete
angle.
somewhere.
And then once it's all done, I mean, maybe this doesn't come all the way here, maybe this, maybe the wall.
Well, I guess that's kind of what I was actually thinking, is that
Yeah.
maybe we don't, but, I don't know.
I mean, it could go this way as well. It doesn't have to go this way. It can go like this. So, but if we're comfortable, it seemed to kind of work the best, at least with this design going that way. But
Yeah, I think it works better that way because you want one end, since the ends are where you can wheel up a wheelchair, you want one end to meet up with the, although either way, never mind. Yeah, I would say that that's good
think we're
because it's
So I
worth
actually
thinking.
had a different opinion, is that
Just
because
saying that out
north
loud.
is this way, most of the sun's gonna come this way. So I wanted the longer piece to be this way.
which it is. That's the way it is now.
I know, that's what
Okay.
I'm saying, so, I mean, that's the reason why I wanted it this way, was because of the sun's orientation, the thing is so high, you're gonna get sun, up into here, anyway. So if somebody really wants to be in the shade, they're gonna be over on this end, or possibly out on this walkway at certain times of the year, right? That's why I think it works better when you're like this.
And I think this way you'll have the centrally located path. People can come in if they have wheelchairs off. They can get into the shade structure from the
Yeah, yeah,
central
yeah.
path.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
All good, yeah?
just trying to move it on.
do you feel like you have the feedback that
If I
you?
remember it, yeah.
Don't worry, I take meeting minutes. I'll refresh your memory.
There's a video, you can watch it on
Right.
2x speed on YouTube, it's fine.
So a couple more things just to point out before we move on. So the hillside climber is that thing that's right underneath Western Nursery's logo.
Yeah,
Correct. And then to the left of it, currently on this plan, are those prefab stone things. I kind of tried to lay the groundwork for switching those out to natural stones with Steve. And I don't know.
Making progress?
Maybe. The other side is that, the other thing is that he did agree that we could swap the two. So we could put the stones on where the hillside climber is and the hillside climber on the other side. And then there's that grassy area there. So that kind of ties in that, the natural area. So you've got the play area there. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out, it's not really necessary, you can't really see it here, but you have that open green space right in the middle for running and playing too,
Yeah.
right? Below the sandbox. And then we're gonna have down by at the very bottom where you have the entryway, on the right-hand side, that area over there is gonna be fenced-in open green space as
Right.
well, with that sign kiosk with the seating. So conceivably, parents could sit there and watch kids run and play in that spot too. So the natural play area isn't necessarily just confined to that green circle in the middle. It's kind of
I
around.
actually would change the name of that.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd have play, I think I would take out
Okay,
the word play.
we should
Natural
definitely do
area.
that.
Natural area,
Sensory area.
Natural
Like
gardens.
Circle of death, whatever you want.
Maybe not circle
Like
of death.
they're now
playground.
interested in it because you named it something dangerous.
Yeah.
Natural, they weren't into.
So let's put that on the agenda to talk about the branding for that then, and renaming that and naming it something that we all agree on. We'll add that to the next agenda.
And if you bring the circle in the center into 8 feet in diameter,
You still wanna go back to the first one?
no, I'm trying to figure out what. Well, yes, ideally, but I wasn't gonna bring it up. In my head, yes. No, I'm just curious as to how that affects your shaping around there, because
Well-
if you still have a 5-foot path and you have an 8-foot.
You still need 5 feet path.
Right, so if you have a 5-foot path, it's gonna be like third-ish.
But the curve part comes in closer now.
Yeah.
I think you still need 6 feet all the way around the circle though, because you have traffic going in both directions,
Okay.
hopefully. The other way, you usually just have traffic going in one direction, right? There's enough space for 2 people to pass, but generally people are moving in one way, but around the circle you have both. All right,
So are we good with the discussion for this part for right now?
it'll be a couple of days, we're kind of busy over there, right?
Like spring or something, by the way?
I know, who would have thunk it, right? Okay, what else was I gonna say? Okay, so the Chelmsford Rocks thing, in the beginning, I find that as a thing that could be movable.
Right.
And so what I'm envisioning is something that is, I don't even know the shape yet or anything, but something that is maybe made out of, copper or something like that, that gets placed, in one location and then later it's in a different location, because it's this, again, the sense of adventure and sense of trying to find what the thing is. And so I can see that, in different spaces around here, while that's being developed, and then as other areas develop, moving that around. I don't know if it's something that's liftable by one person, but maybe 2 people pick it up when it's empty and move it and put it in another place. I've given this a lot of thought. And I also see it as being higher on one side and lower on the other side, so they can reach it and get it, but there's this sense where it is something on its own. Everybody following that?
Yeah,
It's
like the
It's a little rock, I can't forget the lady's name, she was here a couple.
Right here.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot your name, you
And
were here.
Sandy.
But I'm imagining that it's this thing that is very identifiable, and they know to look for it, and then the rocks are there, and they're taking things and coming out. When I was here the last time, I didn't really understand what that meant, but after talking to you, I did, so.
I think it's a great concept if we could possibly start thinking of materials that are a little more, I worry about copper being stolen. I worry about the cost of it and having to replace it multiple times.
Okay,
I like a
so,
whiskey barrel.
a whiskey barrel?
I like a whiskey barrel.
I have a lovely tin
It
giant.
might be,
horse
whiskey
thing
barrel
I'll
might
give
be a
you.
little bit big, I think. You think that's
Well,
too big?
A smaller one,
Maybe, yeah.
but we'd also like to have a small sign in the back.
No, it should have a sign, that's why I think it should be
Yes,
higher in the
okay.
back, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take a
All right,
picture.
What was
so
your
think
tin
about
pan?
this thing about the
I'll take a
cost.
picture.
Danielle was saying that she has a tin.
Maybe it's tin or steel. I don't know. I got it at a Vermont trade show. It doesn't matter, but it's big, like this, and it
You
has
got a nice
handles.
tub?
Yeah, on each side, and it's already aged and weathered. I'll donate it. Can we move on?
Well, before you go on, let me think about that. Maybe there's a
Okay.
way I can come up with to construct it where it's actually pinned into the ground and nobody's stealing it.
I actually like the idea of it
I
being,
have letters on my house, nobody even, a lot of them, so.
your house isn't a public park.
Yes, it is.
All right, so any other comments on this for now? I think we've gotten to where we need to
I'm
get to.
sorry, can I just ask, so is that a good concept to have it not just in one static location to be able to move it? Is that, okay, all right, go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right. So before our next meeting, you'll be able to tweak this.
I don't know, you have a meeting like every week.
Our next one is May 22nd.
All right, I think I can do that.
Okay. Okay.
I know, he called me today at like 5 o'clock, can you do this? I'm like, no, if you want to come and download this truck with me. Alan comes through. Yeah.
All right.
All right, all good?
Thank you so much
Yes,
for your
thank you.
work.
Thank you very
I
much,
really
Terry.
appreciate it, as does everyone.
And your
here.
patience.
Yeah, I really
Yes.
want to see those guys.
Okay.
And we'll, like I said, we'll be looking for a good spot for them.
Yeah.
So before we move on,
Thank you.
thanks,
Thank you so
Terry.
much.
Before we move on to the next scheduled item, I'd like to recognize State Representative Jim Arcero is here. He's joined us. He's actually the state representative for the area that served the Friendship Park, Roberts Field area. So thank you for coming. Would you like to join us and maybe talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. My colleague, Representative Golden's on the phone with his daughter.
I get it.
We
So she's
understand.
not using the phone, although she grabs my phone quite a bit.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. There's Dell and I know Bill had reached out, just inquiring a few things about this park. It's a wonderful project that you had, this Representative Golden, wonderful project that you guys have.
Welcome.
Thank you for
going. And,
coming.
you know, we're here to be helpful, want to be helpful.
Great.
The representative and I were talking on the way over, and we had this conversation on the phone. We were just curious to know, how much of the CPC money, what committee has appropriated money for the project, how many phases there are. I'm hearing it's multi-year, and we would like to help. And there's various vehicles, and I know there's even been a discussion about who we know in sort of the corporate world and how that could. So I guess I just want to open it up that we're here to listen. We want to help. And, give us a list. So
That we
we'll
can
just go
do.
from there. And so
List
I guess I just want to
master.
hear what, and Tom, you see.
Well, let me recognize Tom Golden, who's
Yeah.
here as well. Thank you for coming.
Apologize, that was my daughter.
We
Had to find out what's
totally
going on.
understand.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a quick elevator tour, and then you guys take
Yeah,
over from there.
sure.
So we were last fall. We got the approval of $450,000 of community preservation funds to fund this project. The idea was that we would put together a Chelmsford's first inclusive and accessible designed playground, and I think we're pretty far along the path now. This is really it's a plan that meets a lot of goals. One is that obviously the inclusivity and the accessibility, but also maintenance and long-term cost as well. When you look at inclusive playgrounds, a lot of the inclusive playgrounds that are out there now, they're pretty much a sheet of poured-in-place rubber, right? Which is great, but the problem is in 7 to 10 years, the stuff fails and you got to replace it. So to avoid that $100,000 ticket price 10 years from now, the DPW and O'Brien and Sons and Landscape Structures came up with this idea of using pathways to get people to the equipment, and then having areas of poured-in-place rubber that allowed that accessibility. And then also we have the equipment that allows kids of any kind of ability or disability to play, right? So it's all about side-by-side play. So I don't know if you may wanted to add to that, but I mean, I think we've kind of tweaked this plan as we've been going
Yeah.
along.
I think the only thing I'd add is that when we got the funds from the CPF, yeah.
CPA, CPC.
There's a lot. I know a lot of
when we spoke about trying to get people to vote for them, we stood up expressing that we would be going out and fundraising to try to repay,
of course.
because this committee was formed 2 weeks before that vote happened. So
Okay.
we went to that vote, and some people said, "Why don't you have funds already raised?" And we said, "Well,
We
we
just
just got formed,
got
so we're
sworn in."
doing our best."
Right.
But so we do have money from the town, but we're trying very hard actively to fundraise after the fact like we said we would, and get grants and such, so
What is the, I mean,
sponsorships.
just so.
Scope?
Yeah,
What's the
what's
total cost?
450
Just for the
and then
playground.
What, and then there's, I guess I don't. I'm
Do you
not
have the
aware
overall
of
concept design for?
We developed a master plan for the whole park, and so the playground was really the driving key of that. But there's the other parts of it are that we're going to be adding an interior walking trail, some exercise stations for seniors and other people as well.
For
But then-
Roberts Field as a whole, not,
Right, and then also swapping the location of the baseball fields and lacrosse fields, and then putting all new backstops and fields and drainage and stuff in. So over the last 5 to 10 years, the park has sort of been going through a slow transition in that it's the natural areas have been. We developed a habitat and trail maintenance plan to really develop that and to make those a wildlife sanctuary. So now the natural areas are called a wildlife sanctuary, and we've got trails through those. So what we're trying to do is to try and make this really a holistic plan, all right? So that's why you see that this has sort of the nature theme, and why we're focused on the natural play area and all the stuff we've been talking about tonight. It's because we're trying to make this park a nature themed park.
Right.
I lost my train of thought. What was the
So the full scope design of Roberts Field versus just the playground,
Right.
the phases
Yes.
and everything.
right? So
Including dredging the pond.
yeah, I was gonna say dredging the pond
was a
is.
big thing. So
So
there,
I assume that the
Future.
CTA bonded out, right? 450?
Yes.
That's not a
Yeah,
joke.
yeah.
Okay.
right. So
The
it's-
dredging of, I'm sorry,
Yeah, sorry.
the dredging of the pond, is that,
that's like a phase
That's a
3.
future thing. Everything we're talking about currently is all playground related. That's
Okay.
that's
That's
all
what
the
that
450
450
was directed solely for
and
the
how much,
playground.
will that finish phase one? I mean, total scope of cost is $1 million, is 500?
It was about $1 million
Harvard's
total,
Field,
total scope.
yeah.
So the 450 budget that we had for the playground actually didn't include about what we are now with the natural play area and some of the signage and stuff like that, about $60,000 more that we're fundraising for now. So as of today, we're at about 50, so we're almost there for that extra bit. So the playground project itself is gonna probably be in the $500,000 at the end of the day.
It's expensive equipment,
It is, you know,
yeah.
Also
between
made in
the,
America, gotta say it.
yeah.
And
Yes.
we've, increased the amount of equipment on the playground by a factor of 4
Oh,
or more?
I
I
think.
wouldn't say,
I would not
No, I
say
wouldn't.
Yeah,
that.
I think
No.
it's more like 2.5.
But
Yeah,
we've
2
increased
to
the
3.
footprint of the playground.
We increased the
by-
footprint
but we also
extensively.
expanded the footprint out because we're trying to keep it a little, sort of keep the noisier parts away from the abutter side, and then also to help with the accessibility as well,
Okay.
and to keep that theme.
Now, for the additional phases, and I'm sorry if I jump around a little bit.
Yeah,
It's-
that's what we do here.
Little form, we got microphones and everything. So my question is, moving forward, are you going to the CPC at all for any other phases?
I don't know, that's gonna be up to the town.
Is that something you'd be possibly proposing? Is that?
I would say so, yeah,
Okay.
I would guess, but I don't know, what the appetite's gonna be for it at that,
Yeah.
yeah. I think once we get this done and kind of see how these things turn out, we'll see how they go. There was some sentiment that we're taking too big of a bite out of those funds, and those funds should be used for other things, which, I get. But the other stuff that's going on in the park is a totally different focus too.
Right, so in the.
And
so
this
in the-
one,
oh,
sorry.
No, please.
Part of the getting the funds was there was a serious urgency to this. The previous playground was 20-something years old. It was a liability to the town. You
Sure.
couldn't get replacement parts. It was dangerous. Kids
It was
would
gonna get
splinter.
hurt.
They were
whatever.
taking it out
They
regardless
were
of
so
if
they
this
were
was
taking
going
out in
in.
the fall. If we had money or we had a design or we didn't, they were going to have no playground. So
And this
that's
is gonna be a community build, I assume?
yes.
Yes, it
June
is.
2nd
June
and 3rd.
2nd
You
and
guys
3rd.
are invited to
on.
come and get a team
Okay.
together if you want.
Well, I do know.
Bring
In
ladders.
Littleton, when
Yeah.
I represent Littleton
Oh,
as
yeah,
well. and
Castle and
Castle and
Trees.
Trees was a huge, it was.
What am I doing on a ladder? I'm sorry, Mr.
You see that zip
Just
crew?
a little sound
Yeah. You don't need to use the ladder. Just bring the ladder. We need equipment.
So Castle and Trees, a lot of similar concepts.
Absolutely.
And so I guess my question would be, do you have commitments for 50,000
Yes.
for phase one? Okay.
Yeah, it's our fundraising has been focused on, we're selling bricks, we're creating a new brick pathway inside the park, engraved bricks. We're also seeking corporate donations, which you guys could really help us a lot, just to kind of open those doors and
Yeah,
let folks
of course.
know that we're looking for it. And we have brochures and other materials that we can help.
Be helpful too to know who's given.
We've got an online database
Yeah,
that we
that
have
would be
names
helpful.
associated with all the Chelmsford businesses that we're talking to, and we're tracking all of our progress there. We also have a team working on grants. We kind of early on eliminated the park grant. That would have been our biggest
Yeah.
ticket, but it's Varney Park took one I think a couple of years ago, and I think the demographics for this project just didn't match up very well. We got that opinion from multiple people.
And the current one is for small towns with population of less than 6,000 to bring potable water to the parks. So it's very specific
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
2018.
But we're doing the due diligence and we've got teams out there searching for the grants, and we've just this last 2 weeks, we've completed 4 or 5. I have it listed in here, but, we're making progress.
Well, the representative and I were talking on the way over, and sorry we're late, we're in Boston, and
Traffic was great, I don't know if anyone comes.
No one was out, it was bad weather.
yeah, I know. And so we were just kind of, we wanted to throw it out to you guys sort of informally, and we had a conversation too, just sort of informally, and, is there a wish list that you have all ready for phase 2 that we could be helpful with, possibly in the state level?
Right.
Corporate, of course, we'll do our best too with what's going on now, but that might be helpful for us, and.
Like, when's phase 2? What,
Yeah.
Irrigation.
no, but when would
Well,
it be in
so
time frame?
phase 2 will be probably within the next 2 years, and it'll consist of irrigation, getting the fields fixed, and then getting the interior walking track and exercise.
So that's
stations
something we
and
can, if we're looking at what's coming down the track on our side,
Yeah.
what could we possibly get? Then once, you get it through the House, get it through the Senate, and then we gotta get the governor to release it, so 2
Okay.
years is a good, I was hoping you weren't gonna say 2 months.
Right, next week.
Yes, next week.
Well, next week, we really need that phase 2, it would be a bad, that would be tough. But the corporate donors as well, is that something that you're comfortable sharing? I'd love to see it at some point, just to see
Yeah,
who
definitely.
we know and.
Just so we don't double.
And also teams for the community
Yeah.
build, for like Target, can you send out a team,
Oh, I see.
so
Yeah.
Comcast.
stuff like that too. It doesn't just have to be monetary or in-kind donations, Dunkin' Donuts, do you wanna provide coffee and donuts for the volunteers? Maybe
Right.
more important than writing a check.
Certainly.
Depends
And there
if you
are-
like
there are
coffee
a
or not.
few- I mean, there are a few vehicles we were talking about, on the state level, there's, the next budget is one vehicle, even this budget, we can.
It could be a possibility, it could be a possibility, it's just, anything that we talk about as far as from state side, budgets are tricky. We filed things for other, items for 2 or 3 years, and they get vetoed, which I understand, things, and bond authorizations are a little bit difficult, you just gotta get them funded. So
Right.
there's a whole bunch of, different, and parks traditionally it's always been considered a local piece, but, sometimes we can help out there, just.
What's the best way that we can work with you guys in terms of sharing information? Like what kinds of things? I don't want to inundate you with too much.
No,
So
not at
what
all.
kinds
I mean,
of?
I think there's a
Money.
couple.
Say
we know.
that, sir.
Yeah, I think there's a
However,
couple of things here, and I think it's easier for us.
I started looking, saying, I love what you're saying, move that. I'm like, whoa, 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 I'm not, I'm not.
We welcome all
Yeah,
public
no, there's no
input.
6 seat here.
No, there's like 20 out
No,
there,
I'm not
sometimes
doing
there's.
I guess ultimately, Bill, would be to like a wish list, like.
It's about
this-
money, really.
this- how much
It's
would
about
this be?
trying to get
Give me-
money, right?
Give us like 3 things for phase 2 that you'd like us to,
And this
I don't wanna
costs
say
50
get in
grand, this-
can, but start
Right,
to
right,
move
right.
forward.
Yeah.
No, no.
Yeah,
The
and this is
environmental
gonna,
bond bill's 5 years, you have to be able to, fund a particular project, throughout the cities and towns for the Commonwealth for different environmental projects, open
which
space,
this is
those
kind of, I
sorts
mean, since
Yeah.
what you're trying to
Maybe
do,
we're dredging
sensory,
the pond and stuff.
well, that's,
There's a lot.
Because that's.
the dredging in the pond, that's something, I'm speaking out of turn, I haven't dealt with fisheries and wildlife in a little while, because Peterson left, George, but they've done the North Chelmsford Pond, because when we ask them to,
Yeah.
clean it, stock it, so on and so
Yeah, I
forth.
mean, in this case, we're just talking about dredging because it's literally growing in with grass and it's
Sure.
gonna be gone in like
Right.
10-ish years.
And
if
it-
we
And that's
don't
And
dredge
it wasn't a natural pond. It's something that the farmer who originally owned this property dug to have irrigation water further out.
But see, those are questions we can start asking.
Yeah.
Why can't this happen? Shouldn't this happen? Does DEP have to get involved?
Okay.
Stuff like that. That's stuff that's pretty,
Right.
I mean, that can theoretically start tomorrow.
And it may not have started as a natural place, but now it's very well used by wildlife. I mean, it's hugely important. for
But the
birds and
NRA
that.
piece that Jim's talking about, the environmental bond piece, you know, we could try to put something in there. It's just, I wouldn't want to send the wrong message. If we're lucky enough to get something in there, we still have to get it through the Senate. It still has to be funded by the governor.
The governor has to
But
fund it too. so-
what you're trying to do seems right up with Chairman Pignatelli's,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
view of
So-
what.
Especially if there's funds for inclusivity for the disabled.
Well, okay, so now we're talking,
Yeah.
you know? No, but you're checking some boxes here, right?
Yeah.
This particular piece, they've already hustled, they've already done their due diligence, they already have some money, they're fundraising, this is about disabilities, this is about environmental,
And as I
Natural,
told Representative
inclusive.
Arcero, one of the things that broke our hearts when we first started doing all our surveying is one of the parents on the special ed committee, whose daughter is now in her early 20s, same age as my daughter. When she first came to town, once her daughter outgrew the baby swings,
Yeah.
there was literally no piece of equipment that child could use in the entire town. And that's just an injustice that can't
Yeah.
remain.
but, you know, you're checking, and I hate to say check it, but that's really what they look for. Well, you know, it's an environmental piece, it's, you know, inclusivity, it's all of these check marks. It kind of makes it a little, not so easy.
Direct people's
It-
interest in funding.
It,
Thanks.
it gives us, you know, more of an argument.
Right.
Because honestly, the state really looks at parks and it's tough, and they say, local, they kind of do this. And then they're gonna come back with community preservation. No, we just did that. I mean, and that vote was 4 years ago, I think, when we changed out, you could use some of the community preservation for parks, and
Right.
it took a lot of,
Recreation.
people throwing rocks at us. I'm like, you know, let towns do what they want to do
Right.
with their money. So,
Well, I mean, from a state perspective too, I mean, we're close enough to New Hampshire, right, where I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, this will be probably the closest ADA park and accessible park to the state line.
Right.
So it may draw people into the state.
so that might be an idea.
Actually go to the,
If
it
there's an
may.
ask,
I mean,
if there's an ask for that, I'm thinking NRA, some of the check boxes that, if you could send it to us and just say, hey, we think this is what this is going to do.
sure.
And by the way, there is no other park in this area. And by the way, this is all inclusive. And by the way, and here are the asks, you know, phase 2. I mean, it's really about money. What type of money can we get for this? Can we get the pond cleared? But that's, I don't know who George was replaced by, which I kind of.
So to expound on Tom's point is, yeah, maybe like a, you know, a sort of a synopsis of 3 or 4 things that you think would be appropriate for us to advocate for.
Okay.
With one paragraph of what?
Yeah.
Sure.
Like 3 or 4 things,
Yeah.
and then maybe a price tag, and then as Representative Golden said, you know, some of the you know, the pieces to it that would be appropriate to advocate for instance, you know, ADA accessibility.
Yeah.
A few other things.
Well, beyond accessibility, by using universal design, we have not quite met the goal of 80% of the equipment being accessible.
Yeah.
We're about 70, but we wanted to also challenge the kids who were athletic, who need something that just can't be ADA compliant. So that's the mix we've done.
But I think that's a good piece. It's, once again, it's checking it, and people understand it, and there's not one local, and this is a new idea. And
Closest
you know,
one is Westford.
the biggest deal here is that the town is doing it, you know, so the town's doing it. You guys are, you know, raising some dough. So you got these 2 pieces going, and now it's kind of a little bit better of an argument for us to go and say, the state maybe needs to do something here.
Right. There's a number of partners,
Right.
essentially.
Yeah.
Do you think that there, I mean, we're literally 2 months, 3 months out from the grand opening. Do you think there's anything on the state side that we could
That quick?
target? Yeah, that's too fast, right? So from, and I get that.
Believe me, I would love.
I mean,
I would love to walk in with Jimmy with a check that said $500,000. You guys are done. I mean,
$5 check, you can make a $5 check
$20
this big, it's
Doesn't matter the
okay.
size.
60
Doesn't
days,
matter.
done. This isn't
I am
recording,
grateful
is it?
for
I mean,
So look at it
We're actually on
this way.
TV live, so.
TV live.
I, you know,
I'd love to get it
I think we
done.
could start exploring those things in this
Yeah.
fiscal year.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Because our session ends in August, but there are some vehicles moving, and we're gonna explore all of those.
Okay, so I think we can, as a committee, we can put together these overviews that you're talking
Sure.
That
about.
would be tremendous.
Can you help us understand how we can best target maybe some of your corporate partners that,
Sure.
that aren't, affiliated with the state decisions, but folks that you might just be able to forward an email, or help us to get a brochure in front of them, or just even schedule a
Yeah.
meeting. that we
Just
can
in
do
the
something.
short term.
Especially with the corridor thing of, the corporate elements are already working together
Sure.
with the Route 3 corridor, so if,
But I think you guys are doing all this stuff that we can talk about, the city, the town has stepped up. The fund, now we're looking for corporate partners.
Yeah.
And by the way, we are going to the state.
Right.
I mean, I think it's over, or the day is over of, to be honest, that the state is just gonna come in at any point in time and just pay 100% for anything.
Yeah.
Those days have been gone for quite some time, so you're already checking a lot of the boxes that everybody's on board. You're trying to do checking that box. This is about everybody.
yeah.
Young,
Team attempt.
yeah, but young kids young kids who may have a handicap, they can play here. And by the way, their brother or sister, whomever that doesn't have a handicap, can play there.
Or right next to them. Or
And
right
if
next to
there
them.
are
together.
caregivers or parents who are mobility limited, they can accompany the kids in almost every
pla-
part of the park.
Any place, right.
And we will also have the walking path towards, general fitness of the community.
Yep. No, it's,
So there's a lot of aspects to
Yeah.
it, and I think to Bill's point, corporate sponsors, until we know who you've already asked.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Everyone said no, and then we-
we'll send you a list,
All
I
right,
think,
all right.
as soon as, I
That'd be
don't,
helpful.
Could we send you a link to our list to have you guys take a look and?
Yeah, absolutely, that's helpful, because we don't,
Okay.
like we've asked.
that can be helpful.
And then you may be able to just, shoot these guys an email or give them
Yeah,
a phone call when
absolutely.
you talk to them and say, talk to these guys or take a look at this.
A lot of people want to help, they just don't know how, or they're
Yeah.
not asked.
Exactly.
I know Comcast and Xfinity rather.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have already hit these people, but Verizon, they do a lot of community efforts.
They do, and they're on the list, but sometimes it just takes the right person.
But they
to
have,
ask.
they
It's
have,
hard
they-
to know
yeah, they have teams of
inside
20
people.
people that go out and do X,
Right.
B, whatever it is, right? A, B,
We do have
C.
legislative liaisons on the, the sort of state level that we deal with that could sort of open doors for us that way.
So would you guys be comfortable if we sent you a link to our list and then sort of a script
do it.
of,
Yeah.
here's the pitch, right?
I really love that idea, when you guys were talking about that, the pitch, we were kind of, well, I was listening to what you were saying, about really just putting that paragraph together,
Yep.
I think Jim and I would have the ability to talk about it, but it's your project.
yeah.
Right.
So you're probably going to have, more of the key marks to hit it.
Yeah.
That would be great. Like, I went into several different businesses today, some were local, and then I went into FedEx, and they were like, well, thank you, sounds interesting, but you have to talk to our corporate office.
Corporate office.
And I went,
Long-term, yep.
okay, that makes sense, but I don't know how to,
Yeah, but we can try to figure that out,
So
too.
that sort of thing would be
Sure.
great.
And we've been using the concept of 1 to 101. That everyone in the community from age 1 to 101 will be able to use and enjoy the space.
I think that's the awesome way to do it, 'cause
Because
it's
they
everybody.
already do.
Sure.
We did this, Bill did this incredible reaching out with surveys to see who uses the park, how do you use the park, what else would you like to do with the park? And that's how the original committee came up with the design program. And we found that everyone in the community was already using the park.
And town meeting, through community preservation.
Correct.
Kind of put their money where their mouth was.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone says they love it, everyone says it, and it's
We
not like
wanna
the town.
make it go forward.
It's not like the TM members and community preservation saying, oh, not me. That's where I think this is positive.
Yeah, the community is definitely behind this. There's definitely a
it's good.
majority of the community behind it, and it's needed and it's appreciated too.
Yeah.
So I think our plan of action is that we'll give you sort of a corporate overview of what we're looking for, give you a link to the thing, and see if you can open up some of those doors for us.
That would be great, and then sort of elevator speeches.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll give you a quick script, right?
Yeah.
And you can.
I think, I would appreciate it, because like I said, I think we could do this, but I think you guys are gonna be more
Yeah.
eloquent on
Obviously,
hitting the
yeah.
key
We
points.
actually have the elevator speech in a, 2-minute
Awesome
video?
video that
Yeah.
are-
Yes.
You can just send them a
Yeah,
video.
we'll be-
Oh, that's cool.
And then a one-pager, Bill?
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
the
but
next
that's,
phase.
I didn't, you have a
Absolutely.
video?
It'll be a PDF.
Yes, we have
that we're
commercials for the,
We have a graphics designer who's offered his time and energy
And if you
for
can
us,
just, if
so
you get the
it's
meeting
been
for
helpful.
us, we're happy to go
awesome.
too, right?
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
opening the
of
door,
course.
so if you don't feel comfortable
I think that
doing
would,
that,
yeah, I
we're-
mean.
They all want to be a
open
part
to
of
that.
something.
Right.
And they want to be a part of a victory. They want to be part of something, the community.
Yeah, and then we can go in and do the meeting in the full
Yeah,
push, but yeah.
you're right. I mean,
So look for that from us within the next couple of days.
That'd be
And
great.
then maybe in a couple of weeks, we'll provide you with a phase two similar package, right?
That would be great.
That'll deal more with the phase 2 and 3 stuff that's coming down for the whole park,
That would be great.
right?
just to close out, I mean, I don't want to take the rest of your time here, but on the fundraising piece, when you're asking corporate folks, are you asking them multiple years, or how are you?
We're mostly just going for the playground right now.
Yeah,
For
just
the
the playground.
current, we're trying to build in June, and we're looking for.
But if you said to somebody, hey, could you, and I'm using 10,000 just as an example, 25 over the next 4 years, or, you know what I mean? Have you,
Yeah, so the way that we have it structured is we have, it's a one-time ask, and
Okay.
we've got a couple of different ways that corporations or families even can contribute. We've got a premier sponsorships that have different levels of.
It's
from-
all listed out
Yeah,
here.
from platinum down to bronze.
you.
And then we've got,
Yes, very nice. Yeah.
oh, we have graphics and stuff, you guys got it.
You guys would help the pieces, huh?
and he's been donating his
Yeah.
time and
Oh, that's
coming up
great.
with
That's huge.
gorgeous stuff for
Beautiful,
us.
that's great.
yeah, we've
Came
got
out with
equipment
rebranding
sponsors
for
too.
us.
So we've got a catalog of all the different equipment. So if there's a particular inclusive piece, like our C-Sway, which is one of the pieces that we
Sure.
have that wheelchairs can actually get in
It's really fun.
without having to be transferred.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's a nice piece. A company could sponsor that. And then we've got sponsor plaques and all the goodies set up for recognition. So we've got a pretty tight program defined, I think. But it is a one-time, it's a
I'm just,
one-time ask.
the only reason I'm saying that is because if corporations, I've run into where corporations, well, we can give you 10,000 over 2 years, or 10,000 over 3 years. I'm just trying to wonder, are you equipped?
I think we can. So the way that we've built it is that we've got an account with the town, and we're going to pay invoices out of that account. So and the idea of doing that is that the money gets paid out of that, and then if there's any money left over on the CPF funds, then that goes back into the CPF fund. So then they can reuse those monies elsewhere, and they're going to keep that playground account open at least through FY19. So we don't have to stop fundraising necessarily on June 23rd when we do the grand opening, but we can fundraise out through the end of the year, maybe into the following. So we have a little bit of flexibility on timing on that. We don't have to stop. We don't have a hard stop on June 23rd, but it's not going to be like.
We still really would
multiple
love
years.
to bring you that check, but I'm just being honest. Just being honest.
Yeah, I encourage you to.
Well, believe me, if we could do it, we will. So,
And one last thing, don't want to take too much of your time, but one last question was, if we see something that's on the state level that's moving quicker, is it possible to expedite one of those asks?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Please.
I mean, we can turn around within.
phase 2
5
goes
to
to
10
phase
minutes.
1.5?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
mostly, stopped by money.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just didn't
I
want to,
think
you know,
there's
abruptly
obviously-
call you and ask you that. I just wanted
I
to.
mean,
No.
some of it will be scheduling with the DPW and their
Sure.
stuff.
And maybe what we can do is we can schedule a time that we can present the master plan presentation to you that'll outline all these things.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Yeah.
Because we really have a detailed document that has all, I mean, we covered from security cameras to dredging the pond, you know, I mean, it's
To
literally,
porta potties,
There's
to,
literally everything.
and so we
to
can go through that in
asphalt play
detail.
areas for the teenagers and.
It'll be tough to stay awake, but we'll do our best.
Did you say Xbox areas for
No,
teenagers?
No, I said
said
asphalt.
Oh, I thought you said Xbox. I was like, what? I thought
Yeah,
that was
we're
the
gonna
point was
have a
to-
whole little,
This is
you
the
know,
anti-Xbox.
video.
Matter of fact, you're gonna go into this park and your phone's not gonna work.
Yeah, no, actually, they are planning on putting Wi-Fi on the gazebo
Okay.
shade
For the
structure.
security.
For the security things,
Yeah.
and I guess to
This is
make.
great. I mean, everybody's really engaged.
Cool.
They are, and like you said, I think people are really eager to be part of it. We gotta figure out a way to ask them.
Want to be part of the victory because, like I said,
Yeah,
you know, you folks through your work, through whomever, through community preservation, through town meeting,
Right, private donations.
I mean, you're kind of halfway there.
right, yeah,
That's,
exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
that's pretty impressive. Usually we show up to something and then like, we have this great idea, but we don't have any money, and I'm like,
Sounds wonderful.
Sounds
Well,
like a
that's
great
how
idea.
town meeting, or the Board of Selectmen kind of looked at us.
Yeah, but I don't know who presented, so you got him to do it.
It was a team effort. for sure.
Yeah.
It was definitely, there's been a lot of people that have been involved for
Sure.
the last 3.5 years, so.
Now it's a labor of love. Now it has to get
Yeah,
done.
yeah. Now it's a proof point, actually, so. It's getting done. So, well,
there
thank
is
you
no
guys very much for
power.
coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you
you
very
so
much
much.
for coming on
I'll be
short
in touch
notice.
with you guys, with the asks,
Okay, that
the
would-
next
that would be
day.
very helpful.
So, okay.
Okay. Thank you
Great,
so
thank
Thank
much.
you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Was this here? Did I find out?
Doesn't matter.
Good night, thank you.
That's great.
So,
I
back,
just have to excuse myself really quick.
Okay.
Go to the restroom, but go ahead.
we're gonna, is it okay if we go ahead? Because we
Yeah,
still
that's
have the
okay. Go
quorum.
ahead.
Okay.
Just so you know where I'm going.
So, covered bridge. So, Heritage Construction has volunteered to donate the labor and design work for our new covered bridge. This is the design that Dave Lantain has provided to us. It's a timber frame construction built out of untreated spruce, cedar shingles, and cedar seating so that the kids don't get splinters. It sits on piers, concrete piers, and Steve believes that it can split the fence line like we had discussed.
Okay, great.
Heritage estimated that the material cost for this would be between $5,000 and $7,000, depending on the materials. The $7,000 was the cedar seating and stuff, so I'm thinking we're going to be closer to that. But then we also have the sign that goes on the covered bridge entryway as well, so there'll be some other little things there. And this is one
Do
of the
we-
things. Sorry.
Sorry, do we know what we'd make the sign out of? Is it gonna be a wooden sign? Is that the one that was plastic last time that they didn't realize was plastic? or
Yeah, that was a
something?
weird one. That was like I thought it was a nicer, heavier quality stock sign, but it was actually like a very thin piece of plastic. But I don't know. I don't know where that one came from, but I did speak to my sign guy in Rhode Island, and his recommendation was that we would use solid core PVC green plastic that would actually be carved, and then the carved areas would be filled in with the paint, the white epoxy paint and gold stuff. Heritage actually has a sign guy too, so I asked him if he would get a second opinion on
Yeah.
that. So we're kind of waiting back to hear what those are going to be.
And we want to do plastic as a sign. That's the right.
At least from what my Rhode Island guy said, that would be the most durable way to go. It shouldn't really be an issue that much because it's going to be
It's under the
somewhat covered.
overhang, right?
Yeah, so it's.
I guess I'm surprised that we wouldn't just put a wood sign on a wood structure, but I don't.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know. I think the wood is going to maybe not wear as long because if it's green PVC, then it's carved and it won't fade, right? It'll be solid. So, but
No one has to repaint it.
right. I'll let you know what Heritage says about the sign for that. The other thing is that this would need staining. Steve agreed that this would be stained, I guess annually or biannually, along with the shade structure. And then we'd want to probably do the sign kiosk, the same thing, so all three pieces would basically match, right? Like I said, it's a timber frame construction. I think it's going to actually look, it'll I don't want to say look better, but it'll be a true covered bridge style construction, whereas the other one was sort of a attempt to look that way because it had those side supports and stuff. This is going to be a standalone covered bridge look, so I think it's going to be really sharp with the cedar top. And I said, like I
And
said,
sturdier because of better design,
design and construction, correct?
This is
Correct.
being done by construction firms,
Yes,
as opposed to an Eagle Scout.
which we all loved the previous one, but
right.
Yeah.
no offense to any Eagle Scouts, you would hope a construction company is putting together something, probably.
Well, and that's a great segue to the next part of it, which is Heritage has agreed to do the design for the sign kiosk.
Oh, great.
Right? And we've had, I put it out there as a potential Eagle Scout project, and I've had one Eagle Scout reach out and say that he might be interested in doing it. And the way that I think that would work is that the Heritage would design it and then have a little bit of supervision on the build, and then, but the Eagle Scout would do it. And I think we'll still need to help with the fundraising for the materials, but and we haven't gotten the cost estimate on that yet, but I'm expecting that's gonna be somewhere in the $2,000 range probably. So, but again, it would be stained to match the other, but then they would be very similar styles. They'd both have cedar roofs.
Is that gonna have a cedar bench?
Yes, yeah, it would all be the same stuff. So if that has cedar benches, the
bench on
kiosk
it
would
would-
have cedar bench, a single cedar bench, because remember the one side's
Okay.
open. Any questions on that? Comments? Just a couple of items that I wanted to update you on. I mentioned the sign kiosk. The Buddy Bench, Steve mentioned in his update that they chose to rehab one of the older ones, and they were going to get in touch with Steve, and it sounds like they have. The metal kinetic wind sculpture, we've got the sort of an overview out there. I'll revise that so that it's an 8-foot max tall thing. And keep getting that out. We have a couple of people who have expressed interest in building that, and we'll need to do the funds for that as well, right? And then we put together just an all-available volunteer projects call to different organizations, and mainly to give it to BSA scout leaders so they could get it to their scouts to see if there's anything that they wanted to take on. So that's out there now too.
Back to the bridge for a second. Is that gonna be built? When is that going to be built?
Ideally, after the pathways are in place, so before the grand
community
opening.
build, or after the community build?
After the community build, because the pathways go in the week of the 11th, I think.
Right.
So the pathways go in after the stuff is in.
Do we know if we're gonna be able to get any, construction people from Heritage to help for the community build?
I didn't ask him that, but I will certainly ask him, for
Okay,
sure.
because that would be,
Because he will be given sponsor recognition for the donation of the labor, because it's an in-kind
right,
donation.
right.
So I'll definitely ask if they want to put a team together,
That would be excellent.
for sure. Any other questions? Milestones are still pretty much the same, except that, we were able to extend the engraved brick campaign from April 30th end to a May 6th end, so we still have 4 more days left, if anybody's still tuned in and watching. Buy a brick, buy a brick, buy a brick.
Bought mine today.
And if I didn't mention this before, buy a brick. We've sold, I'm gonna say that, never mind, I'm not gonna tell you how many we've sold.
Over 6
Oh,
I meant, I don't know what I'm
yeah,
talking
that's
about.
okay. Thunder Stealer.
I mean, it's not like I'm heading up the thing, so it's kind of my own thunder to steal.
That's true.
Thunder.
Signage update, we need to start working on what we want these signs to say. This is sort of a short list of the signs that we've talked about so far. So we've got the entryway sign, the one we were just talking about, the carved green PVC potentially, the kiosk, the sponsor volunteer rock to match the previous one, and the natural play area signage, and then the trail signs, the small trail signs that would be part of the nature scavenger hunt. So I don't know if there's anybody, I know Daniil, a few meetings back, you had mentioned possibly wanting to write the story of the playground.
I mean, I like the story because I think it's, special, so I can write that.
Do you want to draft
So,
that?
Yeah.
And do you want to take a shot at the rules too, or just that the content on that sign, or do you want to,
Yeah, so story,
and then
rules.
park
Okay, our next
rules?
meeting is the 22nd. I can have it by then, but until the bricks are done, I'm a little tied up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
And
can
I
do
bet with-
story rules.
So
Yeah,
I
that's
bet with
fine.
the rules, we can look at what Littleton and Billerica have.
I was
for
just gonna
rules on
take
their
pictures
thing.
of some playgrounds
Right.
we go to and do it
Right.
kind of off
I
of
have
that.
pictures of the
Unless the
Bill
t-
Ricker one
Okay.
already.
Yeah, and I think
No
I have
problem.
pictures of the little.
Unless the town has something specific, who would I ask? I mean, if there's something I have to include from a town perspective, do I just ask Paul?
Is there something on Varney? Is there a?
I don't know, but the way I would recommend doing it is to go ahead and let's draft up something and then send it over to
Okay, that's fine.
facilities, Kathleen
Yep.
Canavan at facilities, and then they can kind of
Add
tweak it from
something if
there.
they need to
Yeah.
from a policy.
remove or
Okay.
take away or add or whatever.
No problem. Okay,
Make it as easy for them.
no problem. I will try to have it much before that meeting, but
And I don't know how much time you want to spend on this, but I kind of wanted to get people started to think about it. I can start outlining the sponsor rock information, and then I have the list of the past committee members from the town meeting presentation, so we can add our names to that, and then add some other folks that have been in meetings throughout, those kinds of things, and we can kind of develop that. So I can take that one on if you want.
So for the sponsor rock, for the beautiful official final solid metal sign, if we're taking funding until next year, we gonna put off doing the solid metal sign until next year?
Yes, but we'll need to have
But do
the
a
sign,
A
the temporary
faux
sign.
plastic
Yeah.
will look like this in the future?
Right.
Okay.
And so we'll just add to that, but it'll basically have all the same names and information on there that
Right.
would be on there normally, I think.
Okay.
So we'll just need to do the signs for the garden, and maybe we're not at a point yet that we can really define what those are gonna
Since we
say.
don't even know what the garden's shape is exactly,
Yeah, that might be a little premature.
since we don't quite know the garden's shape
Oh, right,
exactly,
right.
maybe we,
Whoops.
Spend more time on the nature hunt stuff.
Okay, is that something that you'd wanna, is there any interest in doing any one of these, the copy for any of these on your part?
I'm still trying to work with the grants.
Okay,
So my writing time is kind of,
okay. All right, well, if anybody has an interest,
Really random question. So our kiosk, welcome, and then story rules is not part of that welcome? Do you need me to do the welcome to? What do you want, just welcome to Friendship Park? Or you want to say something more, welcome to Friendship Park, a place for everybody, and then the rest?
I was in, and
Yeah.
I don't know that this is the right way or not, but I'm just saying that the way I envisioned it was sort of the story of the volunteer history of Friendship Park, as well as
Like the previous
what
Friendship
we've made
Park?
it,
right.
not necessarily focusing on that, but at least acknowledging that, and then sort of the focus of what this park is now, you know?
like the
No,
original
no,
park
no, sure,
was
I
put
get
down.
that with the story, but then what do you want from the welcome piece? See how there's like the bullets? I was just looking at the bullets. Like, do I incorporate the welcome?
Right, so
Before
if you,
the story?
if you look at the kiosk above that map thing, there's
Yep.
a strip of, a long strip, and I think that says, welcome to Friendship
Okay,
Park.
that's it. Okay, perfect. That's fine. I just didn't know if you meant there needed to be a welcome and then the story, like another
Oh, no,
paragraph.
I think
No,
that's
okay,
what that is,
perfect.
sort of the
Do
welcome.
we
Got
want
it.
it as
That's fine, too.
Friendship Park or Friendship Park at Roberts Field?
It technically should be Friendship Park at Roberts Field, because that's how we're branding it. But if it looks like it's too much squeezed in, then it's just welcome to Friendship Park. Maybe that's,
How about at Roberts Field in smaller letters below it?
if that works. How about we maybe get John to mock it up and see, and if we think it's too,
Yes. Let's use our graphics designer to help us with our graphics. That sounds
Right.
like a good
Yes.
plan.
but we'll make it as an option,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And then the flip side of it, we have that opportunity for another banner headline thing above it. And I don't know if that's just a repeat of the Welcome to Friendship Park or what, but we could conceivably put a park map. That's why I have a question mark on it.
Yeah.
We could conceivably put a park map, and it could be, you could have the Roberts Field thing pay off on that side, you know, over the seat, over the bench seat.
Yeah.
So wait, on the side without the seat, we're talking about having the welcome and the stories and rules and the map. Yes?
Map, and then maybe the bulletin board too, because we didn't want people looking at bulletin board stuff while somebody was sitting there. So that side has no seat.
So the side with the seat has what?
Conceivably, the park map.
See, because that would be the one I would imagine people are gonna wanna,
Yeah, I'd probably want to have that on the side facing the pathway. Because when you walk in, you're going to want to, that's what's going to gravitate people is, oh, let me see the
I would
map.
say put the bulletin on the,
Would you want to do the playground? Do you want to do a playground map and a park map, or just a park map?
I would do just a park map because it's inside the playground, right? Or I'm sorry, just a playground map because it's inside the playground, and then we're going to have a separate welcome for the whole park at some point, right? As part of different phases. Over by the,
Right.
yeah, so that's where the map will be for the whole park.
Okay. Well, what would you want to put on the bench side of the sign kiosk?
I would say, well, Yeah, that's why I mean, I know you said not to do the bulletin.
Yeah, I would do
for
the
there, But I would
bulletin.
probably do the bulletin.
I'd do the bulletin.
On the,
On
on
the-
the
with
signs?
on the bench
Okay.
side.
Yeah,
Alright.
let's see, yeah.
So that whole front side is basically the welcome
The
rules?
formal side where,
Right.
you know, and then
Yeah.
the back side is the, where you can sit and post what you want.
Okay,
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, perfect.
That's
All right, no
my
problem.
2 cents.
All right, any other things on here? And just to let you know too, that the little mini sign kiosk things that are already out there that the Boy Scout Project did, they were built out of non-waterproof materials, and the doors are off, but we can use them, modified them. They have these little raised areas that we can actually affix a small sign to,
Perfect.
and it'll look like a nice sign, so we can make it work. So
Yeah.
that's where those guys are.
Are we noting on this signage about the hunt, the nature hunt thing, or is it only going to be, can we make note of the nature hunt to go see the natural area?
in the
too?
story I can, like,
Yeah, like go
check
see,
out,
check
okay.
out the nature, check out the rest of the, somehow connect where,
nature.
connect to the rest of our,
hunt,
of Roberts
the
Field
rocks.
with the nature hunt started in, obviously the words are bad, but the
Right.
concept is,
Rocks and senses,
solid.
okay,
Right.
um,
And then have sort of more information on the
in that area.
sensory garden.
right, so direct people to the
Sign.
sensory garden saying there's something that if you start in sensory garden will bring you about to the
Mhm.
other things, but,
Yeah, I can put
but make a
something on
note there that, to
Absolutely.
connect it all together.
So I'll make sure on that story I have something, I'm just calling it a nature hunt, but we all know what that means, the Chelmsford rocks, and then I'm gonna call it the senses, like I'll make sure that I
Yeah.
note that so people are looking for it.
Yeah, that's, I
Okay.
think that's a really good.
Okay.
Okay, good. Any other comments, questions? All right, and that'll probably, oh wow, this is so small. That'll grow as time goes. So as part of one of the grant things that we did, Steve prepared this top part of the budget to show where the $450,000 is going. And roughly that totals up to $445,659. So the stuff that's below it is all the stuff that we've talked about, itemized out. And two of the biggest costs that are in here are like major guesses, guesstimates. The first one is the natural play area, a guesstimate mainly because we haven't had the hardscape material amount defined yet. And then the other part of that is that we haven't defined what type of hardscape material we're going to use, because we can use crusher fines for $10 a linear foot, or we can use bricks for whatever that amount is. I
I
still
thought we
haven't
agreed
gotten.
last time on crusher fines, didn't we already?
We did, but I thought it would be helpful if we had the numbers just to look to say, that if we did cobblestones, it would be $25 a linear foot, but if we use crusher fines, it's only going to be 10, just to kind of do our due diligence.
Right.
And I talked to Steve today I asked him specifically if the town would be willing to maintain it. He didn't answer that question, but I'm assuming that since they're doing the interior pathway that they would. But he did say that the maintenance should be pretty straightforward. The only thing we may run across is that if they're mowing it, that the turning the wheels and stuff may rut out the thing, but that'll just have to be fixed, right?
I mean, if we did some variation of cobblestones on one path, like, because remember the original theory of the Terry's thing was you could have variation in path and sensory and that stuff, and you have like 6 different paths. If we did like one cobblestone, I don't know.
Right, yeah, and that's the other part that we need to work on too, is that do we want to do that sensory path thing? Is it just one piece of, one of those spokes, or is it, 5 different types of things?
So if we start with the
Which
crusher
one?
fine, we could always upgrade a path
Right.
here and there. We're not set with just,
Phase
oh,
2,
So I
when we
think-
have
yeah.
irrigation.
Right,
yeah, phase 2. It'll go into phase 2, right. Everything's phase 2.
But that'll include the decking around the tree and,
potentially, but we may not need, because if we do decking, then when that kind of leads itself to doing different types of hardscape thing.
Right.
Or we just do all the same, if we're going to go outside the protection zone.
Yeah, hopefully he'll do it outside the protection zone after today's meeting, so that won't be.
But my point is that number is very fluid. So the covered bridgeway is pretty tight. That's 6,800, and that included the sign estimate cost, which I think would probably be a couple $100. I tried to put in the center garden wall was based on the 14-foot, so that'll come down a little bit.
Sorry, the sign thing? Oh, you're talking about the sign on the covered bridge.
On the covered bridge,
Okay.
correct. And I was estimating that at about $200. I think it may be less, but I don't know for sure. The engraved brick pathway, I don't have a cost for that yet back. But I just put in 25,000 because that's about where we're at from a race standpoint.
So that's how much money we've raised, but we don't have any idea how much 100 linear square, whatever.
We had originally said that one run was going to be 18, and everybody seemed to kind of buy off on that when we talked about brick costs and stuff. So, but I don't have anything final back or revised back yet.
Did we know what the length of that pathway is?
I don't remember specifically, no. We must have to get to that $18,000. It was a 7-foot pathway too, so the numbers were all different.
A 7-foot width?
It was originally, yeah, that's what the estimate was built.
And now it's 6 feet?
I think now the pathway on the interior is 5 feet, I
Yeah, I
think.
thought it was 5.
Okay.
So the ask is out there. I'm just waiting to hear back. These are all the different signage things. Obviously, these are kind of guesses, but I think they're pretty close. And then the things that we weren't paid for, we had those 2 sandbox diggers, and then we need to come up with a cost if somebody was to take the project on to rehab the 2 picnic table, or the 4 picnic tables and the 2 benches that Steve has. So in total, right now, we're looking at about $63,000 that's not
Funded.
funded.
Did we expect to have this much over the original 450?
I don't know, because we would have budgeted for it if we had.
Right, I
So-
guess I'm trying to figure out how it,
I mean, the natural play area again came after, right? So that's
Right.
something new.
We didn't put a signage budget in the original.
Right.
were we just expecting the
Covered
covered
bridge wasn't
bridge was going
planned
to be
originally.
covered by whoever built
We
it?
thought we were going to save the covered bridge.
Yeah,
Because we
we
were planning
did.
on just reusing it, yeah. And then the brick pathway, I think, was planned to be donated, so that was probably the only thing that was,
That was done well. You know, the idea of doing the engraved brick pathway came well after we presented.
yeah.
Yeah, and then adding it into the inside of the playground happened a couple weeks
Right,
ago.
yeah,
So,
yeah, so all of
Yeah.
it happened after, yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, at least in my way of thinking is that we're, and I think the 63 is going to come down with those 2 big numbers, the 20 and 25. But in my way of thinking, whatever funds we raise, we try to pay for these things where we can. Can you wave in front of that thing? We haven't moved and it turns the lights off.
Sandy, can you raise your arm up?
There you go.
She's got the power.
So we pay for this stuff first, and then we start putting money back into the community preservation fund after that.
Well, I mean, the engraved brick pathway is in and of itself a fundraising tool, right? So
Right.
there's a cost associated with raising the funds, and that cost is the brick pathway.
Correct.
Hopefully
And I'm-
that nets out at 0 or positive. The whole idea was to net out positive on that.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm hoping
we will.
I mentioned this to Bill, but I'm hoping that the amount that we spent on the amount of revenue on the pathway that we get, I'm hoping is more than the amount it costs to put in the brick pathway, and that some of those funds can go towards some of the rest of this stuff. Is that not-
I'd love to be able to answer that. I don't. It just depends on.
I think we're not sure.
This
still.
goes back to these are the 3 priorities that we identified for the brick pathway monies. And number 1 being the run from the existing pathway to the new covered bridge. Number 2 being the cost to go from the covered bridge to the shade structure. And then the third would be just to connect that second opening in the middle of the fields. So we'll need to, at some point, understand what the cost of each of those pieces are and compare that to how much money we have, and then
Right.
decide,
What do we
you know,
do?
best case, we have more than enough money to do all 3 of those things, and then do that, and then pay the rest back to something else.
I guess that's my personal question is, I don't see the 600, I don't know how far 600 bricks goes in terms of linear space. My guess is,
Square feet.
huh?
6 bricks equals a square foot.
But they're mixed in with blank bricks too, so it
Right.
stretches as far
Right.
as you want.
But, yes, but I guess my question is, do we want to stretch it throughout the playground? Or, in my mind, I think the playground would be better served if we kept the bricks within path 1 and the funds and the cost for it within path 1, and then the excess funds go towards some of the other things that we're trying to fund in the park. Because I guess I don't see a significant benefit to spreading them out throughout the park when they're gonna be interspersed with other things. If you keep it in path one, then it's all brick and it's the continuation of the, you know,
From the old path
from the
to
old
the new.
path to the new entry, so you have a concrete old entry to new entry, and that's a solid thing. And then I think it would be, given that we said we were going to try to, you know, fundraise, I'm just concerned that we have some funds left over to, with all the new things, to go towards paying back into the funds.
Yeah, and I don't see the path to the shade structure as having the same kind of priority
Right.
as linking the two brick paths.
Okay, well, in my mind, I can't make the decision until I know what the costs are and how much money we have to work with. So I think those are all great points of view,
Okay.
and
I guess that my
could go
question
either
is,
way.
if you know the monies are, even if you knew that we had money to pay for 1, 2, and 3,
and had money left over to put towards something else, I could advocate for doing it all. I would like to do it all, but I don't think that's going to be a reality. But I don't know until I see what the numbers are. So
I guess putting a brick pathway throughout the park is not as high on my goal list as getting the funds. I mean, people put the money towards the bricks, towards fundraising for the park, and I see it as fundraising for the park, optimizing that dollar. If we put the bricks down in a concrete entryway to entryway section where you're tying the old to the new, there's some symbolism to that, and then you're using as many of the funds as possible to fund playground.
yep. Can we table that until we get all the data in though, so we can kind of have that one last discussion rather than. I mean, I acknowledge what you're saying, and I agree that it does make sense. I just don't think we can make that determination yet until we get finish the brick campaign, know how much money we raise, and then also know what the real costs are. You know?
I guess what I'm saying is,
See,
to me,
the-
it doesn't
The
matter.
cost, I actually agree with Elizabeth here, that the cost is irrelevant. I don't care if we have money to do 2 and 3. I want that to be crusher fine, and I want the
Yeah.
funds that
Right.
we have to go into other things.
It's concrete, I think, is what Steve's doing for the.
Okay, or
road.
I
concrete,
want it to
like-
be,
All right, but can we? But I'd like to at least table it until we get to that point that we know.
I'm saying that I don't need it
I don't
tabled,
need it
so I
tabled.
move
Yeah.
to vote on this now because I agree with her. I don't want 2 and 3, like they can all go into one, unless we have too many bricks
Right, that's
that
the-
are
the only
engraved
way I
to
can
fit into
see-
I
number
don't know if we
one.
do or don't.
I
yeah.
can't, it's based on my rough Google measurement, it was like 103 linear feet for one.
Okay.
This is rough.
Yeah.
So how many you said?
Well, I think it's 6 bricks per square foot.
Okay, but that's not square foot, right? That's
Well,
linear
you-
foot.
How long is it?
So it's 100, so it's 500
And it's
square.
5 feet wide.
So it's 500.
square feet.
So you're still gonna be scattering 600 bricks across that.
Can we just be? It's 9:10, so we'll have all this information by our May 22nd meeting, and we can fully vet everything, and take that vote and make that decision on how. Because by that time,
We're not
we'll-
always all here, and I would
by
just
that
like,
time we'll also know all the costs for all the other stuff too. So we'll be able to better say, you know.
Because the big question is, what happens if we have too many bricks
you would
to
have to have,
go beyond
from
even
what
one?
the guesstimate we're looking at, you'd have to have 5 times as many bricks as we have right now to overfill that space,
To overfill path 1.
to beyond path 1.
And I guess what I'm saying is that we can't really do anything with the information, even if we took a vote now. So
Yes, we
But
could.
that-
Well,
but that's
I think
your
they're trying to say,
opinion.
like,
Yeah.
regardless, they don't want to do phase 2 and 3.
Exactly.
Well,
That's
then-
what we're
And
saying, and
the-
we're willing to vote it. I make a
Yeah,
motion to
the
vote on
three
it
of us
right
are
now.
And I will
Same
second
decision.
that.
Where we don't particularly see the need to create the second
okay,
brick path of 2
And it just
3.
saves us work too, like that we don't need to do is the
Right,
whole
we-
thing. So
Yeah.
I vote that bricks will only be put,
make a motion.
I make a motion to vote that bricks will only be used in that number 1 area. Does
And
that,
I second that.
To connect the entryway to the old brick
Yes.
path.
Old entryway to new entryway.
And
So,
you seconded
I
something.
second it, so,
all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's okay. Hey,
And I vote against.
okay.
And then we can have one thing that we're not talking about for the next 3
Yes,
meetings.
and we don't have to do any research for. We have so many other things to do work
No, I
for.
agree.
So, okay.
So, This is the recap to date. So we had 3 goals. We blew out the third one, which was $10,000. We passed the second one a couple days ago, and now we're pretty close to passing goal 1, which is $25,000 in proceeds.
That's awesome.
So and $25,000 in proceeds and 620 some odd bricks. So I would call that a pretty major success.
That is awesome. Good job, Danielle. Thank you
No,
for.
I didn't do anything. The signs were a huge help. I think that really made a big difference.
But you have dealt with every single brick coming in, which means that you have proofread
And the
600
people to my
And the
house.
people,
Exactly, and
yeah.
the people to your house, you have proofread
You've done an
600
awesome
books.
job.
Bricks, so thank you very much.
No problem. I'm happy to do it.
Publicly acknowledge your awesomeness, so.
Rough calculation, you got about enough bricks sold right now to cover 133 square feet, and that's the engraved bricks.
Okay.
Mhm.
The doubles, of course, are.
Yeah.
actually what's cost.
I mean, so you have like, say we
Yeah,
have
it makes it hard.
You could
1.5.
fill in, you know,
Right.
with plain old
Mhm.
brick and probably look better than
Yeah, I think we
Mhm.
thought,
packing them in there.
yeah,
Yeah.
we talked
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Anything else on bricks?
Nope.
Fundraising. So we do have the pre-existing monies raised by the first committee, and that's $12,542. The grant writing, we submitted these grants over the last couple of weeks, which the shade structure grant looks pretty strong. Corporate sponsorships, we have 3 premier, 3 equipment sponsors, and then we have at least as many, if not double that, in the pipeline.
Awesome.
What 3 pieces of equipment?
Yeah.
2 to be determined, and
The
And
rope.
bridge.
And the
and
bridge.
the belt bridge, and the to be determined are probably in the nature play area.
Okay.
A lot
Do
of
we
people are
want to,
interested
like-
in that.
Mention at every meeting who our corporate sponsorships are.
We can. I'm not prepared to do that tonight,
Okay.
though. The GoFundMe, we actually had 3 donations over the last couple days of $90. So there's the $86.49 there.
Processing fees.
Oh, okay.
The BioBrick we talked about, and that was today, so it may have changed since we've been here. We had 72 sales yesterday, so people were paying attention to the
The deadline?
or 62 sales, yeah, to the deadline. So that was pretty impressive. And but we only had like 4 today, so it's been kind of.
Not everybody got the memo that it was extended, because I had people come to my house the other night because they wanted to make sure they got it. And
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
you can come, but it's also extended. So you can put it in the mail too.
So
but
we're
yeah.
at almost $50,000 in fundraising, so I think that's pretty strong. John redid the video. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'm sure, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, not since you redid it. I couldn't, the link didn't work when I was opening the presentation. so.
Yeah, I set it up to work, but it doesn't look like it's going to cooperate. So
How did he, did he just adjust sound and stuff? or-
change the
Pretty minor.
sponsor brick from the thing in the trees sponsor thing to our rock plaque.
Oh, okay.
And I asked him if he would be able to cut us another copy with the engraved brick taken out of it for running forward. But we'll see. We should be able to do something with that.
Did we have any forward motion with getting these on the,
I've
Movie?
left messages with the 2 places and haven't gotten anything back. So
phone calls?
yeah, well, I mean, the one that I actually went to, because we were seeing a movie anyways on Sunday, the person you want to talk to isn't
Right.
here because there's only one other person watching
it's
this
Sunday
movie
night.
with you. No, we watched it Sunday morning when
Oh.
everyone's at church. So, I haven't heard back. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Community build scheduled for June 2nd through 3rd, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. We've talked about doing 2 shifts. We have the volunteer needs of, we have the 11 pieces of equipment that we're going to post the PDF instructions to online that people can preview if they want to tackle those. We actually have, I think it's 32 registrations now. The last time I checked was just a couple days ago. We
I
have.
have some to give you too. That's on my list from the tag sale.
My
Okay.
husband and I haven't signed up yet, but we will, so.
Right,
we've got a
ditto.
couple more. It's like,
My husband was going to until this trip to Rochester, where
So we've got,
I'll tell you later.
we've got to put together the registration forms and then develop a scheduling portal. I know, Danielle, you sent out a link to one that you liked.
Just the one that I use all the time, so I know how to use it. It's all in one place. You don't have to say to donate a tool, click here, to donate water, click here. It can all get clicked in the same thing and edit it.
And then you're gonna work on the registration forms, right?
So I send over our first kind of draft of like a touch thing, you know, the call out letter was kind of what Megan referenced it as. Did that not go to you?
I don't see it.
Yeah, I saw you, the one that kind of, it
I
was a
sent
first.
it out, it was my first draft, and I sent it to everybody in the fourth, because I'm doing that as part of the fourth.
Yeah,
So it went to you, Elizabeth,
see it.
Heather.
I'll double
I think
check.
I sent it to everybody except for Tony, because
yeah.
I don't
you
want to
s-
bother
You
him.
said, I'm sending this to everyone except for Tony, and then. it
Yeah,
was-
okay, so sorry, so that's done. And I did talk with Megan because our town, you clarified, Paul said, we don't need an insurance thing, but they do for landscape. So I just need to bounce back and forth and get that clarified.
I would send it to Paul's attention, just to
send it
say
directly
that
to
they've
him.
asked for it, and is it okay? Just so we
Yeah,
don't,
she has the copy for me, so I can just say, is this okay?
just so that we don't jeopardize any kind of liability issues or anything, you know?
Yep, absolutely. Insurance, so that's who I'll run that by and get that part done.
So I guess the plan is that we'll get people signed up to the link that we have now, the 32 people, and then direct them, send them the registration forms, and then get them signed up and scheduled on the portals, right? That's kind of how the process will work.
Yeah, and this letter that I had put together, it was something that I felt could be kind of easily posted on, you know, Facebook too, you know, wherever, just to, even if we're handing it out to somebody, like you could hand it out so they have all the information in one place and it directs them
Okay.
where to go. Don't
Well, we're going to
mind.
try and get them scheduled before June 2nd, though, right? We're going to try and get them into the system so that we can manage because I think there's a good possibility that if we're successful with getting teams, that we're going to have more than 50 people wanting to work in a particular day. So to actually schedule them beforehand, I think would be the way to go.
Yeah, I would like to have people scheduled beforehand, but one thing I wrote, I don't know why this letter didn't go
Yeah,
to
I'm
you.
trying to find the letter
I'm
now.
so sorry. So one thing I had said is even if you, to help us, please pre-register, if you will, to give us an idea. But I want people to know they don't have to. They need to show up anyways, even if you're not, because we can actually register you right there. It's signing the waiver and a name tag and
Right.
bring your thing.
Right.
Bring your ratchet and tool. And on that list, it had like the tool list. Can you
But
send
our
that to
focus
him?
will be to try to get them to sign up on the web portal thing first, right?
If more than
I mean, yeah.
people
should
than
be.
we expect show up, there's no downside. Right?
No.
Well, it sounded like from Megan's point of view that if we had too many people, it was going to make it too chaotic and it was going to be a distraction. That's what I heard her say.
I just don't think that's gonna happen based on the experience at Castle in the Trees. Yeah,
Okay.
Lots of bittersweet there, if nothing else.
yeah, I think that if people show up, we're going to have a job for them. And if 500 people show up, that would be great, but I don't actually see that happening based on the weekend that we have it planned on and childcare and
Right.
if the weather is
If it's
bad,
good-
you know, people are just not
Right. If
gonna
the weather's
come.
bad, people aren't coming. If the weather's good, they might be doing something else.
Yeah, so my thing is, yes, I had asked them, please, you know, try to help us for planning purposes, but you can also just show up.
Yeah,
That's
I'd rather
okay,
have too
too.
many than too little. If we have too little, we're in big trouble.
Yes.
I agree with all those comments. I just feel like if we can, as much as we can schedule ahead of time, because if we've got like, and then the next point is that I reached out to all these guys asking if they could put teams together.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they may be able to fill in or ask for a particular shift. And if we have a pretty accurate count on where people are gonna fill in, we can kind of pop these guys in
I
there.
thought I remembered her at the fourth meeting saying, it's, you know, register people, know who's coming like that day, but don't create like too many shifts.
Yes,
And
she
don't
did
make it too
specifically say
complicated.
that.
Okay.
That was kind of her recommendation, because it
Mhm.
just gets too crazy.
Yep.
So I think I would like to see people register so we know who's coming, and we have,
Yeah.
you know, we can be like, okay, we're good, like we get enough
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, and I'm sorry you
Um,
guys didn't get it. I sent it to my fourth board members to
No, that's
approve
okay.
before sharing with the RFAC.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I got it. I just don't know where.
But then I think, you know, if we are able to just, if
I
people can
just
say, hey, I'm gonna be here on Saturday or Sunday,
Search for
Right.
that's fine. Like, I don't think it's like, oh, I'm gonna be here for the half
Oh, it's
day
on
or
April
from this hour to this hour. 'cause
And
then
also,
that
if they
gets-
can only be there, yeah, for 2 hours, like, I don't want to discourage them either.
And that's,
so,
I think that was
yeah.
her point, right? If people can just show up for an hour, then show up for an hour, right? And that's great, but.
So what I've been telling the different people that could potentially generate a team is that, you know, it would be helpful if they could put together a team that could work one or either days for 2 or 3 hours.
Absolutely,
Right.
yep, absolutely, that's fine, and that's no problem. And I can take care of scheduling a team for them for sure, you know, like, then we would know, okay, it's great that we know this is what we know, but there's just a lot we're not gonna know.
So we're doing 3 hours, not 4 hours?
I'm doing 7 to noon and noon to 4, it just
Right.
kind of felt,
So that's like
people aren't
5.
gonna show up right at 7, and she kind of said that first hour is really rough getting stuff.
Right. So those are
up
like
and
4-hour
going.
shifts for the.
Yeah, but I'll
team.
take 2 or 3, it's fine,
Right.
yeah, and that's
I
no
think
big
you
deal.
give 7 to 12, you're gonna have people showing up at like 8 or 9.
And Megan said that, yeah, that they'll show up for an hour, but they'll stay all day.
Sometimes, yeah.
Good, yeah.
On the sign-up page, I have above the contact form now that if you want to sign up a team, they should send us an email.
To, where do we have?
It goes to me, but if you want it to go to you, I can do that.
I just thought maybe we should have a separate email account, maybe like volunteers. And I need that at least to link if I'm allowed to go forward with the volunteer spot, whatever it was I sent you, because I don't want it tied to my personal email. That way other people can look in. I'm not going to give my personal.
Right, how about community build? Would that work for you? Or
I just thought volunteer at
you can
Roberts.
already have it, but I'll double check.
Oh, okay. Or com build, make it, you know, something,
Do you want them going to you?
or just build.
Yeah, you
So
can
you
make
need
it.
to create it
Yeah.
and then you'll send it
Absolutely,
like
yeah.
we did with the bricks?
Yep, just like we did with the bricks. I'm happy to do that. I just think it's easier, like I said, in terms of then, again, something happens, other people have login information, and
Right.
I don't want to make it too hard and have too many emails either for you, so I don't know what's the best.
I'll set that up and send you that information again.
Okay, great.
Any other comments or questions on community build? Next meeting date, we are scheduled for May 22nd, and I wanted to point out that it's going to be in that room next door. So we'll sit at the big table.
Comfy seats.
Yeah. So we don't need to worry unless there's a conflict for anybody and anybody wants to reschedule. We should be set.
I can't be there, but don't reschedule just for me, if you guys can all make it, so I'm gonna be out of town. And won't be back until the following week,
Okay.
so.
When? What is the following?
Okay.
Is that Memorial Day?
Yes,
Yeah.
then that's the afternoon.
Be the 29th, 30th, or 31st. Do you want to look at rescheduling?
I don't. My
I
dau-
can't reschedule.
Okay.
I was gonna say,
Don't-
my daughter's surgery has been rescheduled
Yeah,
to
you
the
guys got it all
25th,
worked
so
out,
I would
don't
like.
Oh, we're the 16th of May.
Ah, good times.
All right, so the 22nd, and then we'll schedule our following June meeting that day.
Okay,
Final thing,
Jim, could you go?
I got it. It's okay. No.
Thank you.
so we have meeting minutes from 2:27, 3:15, and 4:19.
Yes.
Is there any comments or changes to those three?
I know you sent me
I-
one small thing where I did a goofy, like, repetitive thing.
Oh, that was from like.
Or from the last one. I was like,
that was the
whatever
last
you
one.
sent me,
I was gonna
whatever
say,
changes
I
I've gotten, I've
completely forgot to read the
input.
minutes, so I'm sorry.
So are we ready to vote to approve those three?
As long as it doesn't, you'll still have a majority if I don't vote because I forgot to read the minutes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
You can still vote to approve.
Okay, I kind of, sure,
You just won't have any corrections to submit.
he'll be happy.
I move to vote on approval.
Of 2:27, 3:15, and 4:19?
Yes.
I second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'll work on the minutes for the site walk.
Okay, great. I
Have
do
that.
need somebody else to do those 4-4. So I know you already did one of the meetings that I was on vacation for, and now the site walk.
All right,
Are we done?
I believe so. Any other comments or questions, or?
Then move to adjourn?
Second?
Adjourned.
Adjourn.
Thank you.